Alright. Inna alhamdulillah wa kafah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulih al-Mustafa. Wa ala ibadihi alladhina irtada. Wa man bihudahum ihtada. Wa bi athari ahli al-Madinah iqtafa. Wa ba'd. Fassalamu Allahi ala al-qawm. Ahlan wa sahlan bikum wa marhaban.欢迎来自 bienvenidos a todos. Pakhair ragle, khush amadid, people. And as always, swagatam. Alright, mi gente. Alright, ¿cómo están? ¿Qué lo que? What's going down? Let me just bring up the YouTube chats as well. Right, just do a quick audio check. Make sure all the sound is within proportionality. Wah, yar sahib ji, wa alaikum assalam. Right, Sayyid Abrar, Zaid, salam. Farid, I love you. Mufti, I love you too, yar. Geo, sab meri jaan. Right, Sayyid Abrar, ya ahil. Mufti, whose your vote going to for president? It's going to me. So let me check my Facebook. Gente, Muti'ur Rahman. Alright, كيف الأمور? Chaudhry Walid Imam Kazi, Ahlan wa sahlan bik, marhaban. Ayub, you're doing it, man. You're doing it. Riz, Clay, Khadim, Henna, as always, Ahlan wa sahlan bikum, people. Mufti ji, lo gori aaya. Lo ji, gori aaya, gori. So, what is going down? We've got quite a bit to cover today. Quite a few questions, quite a few, some new interesting kind of thought processes going on. I want to share that with you guys. It's to do with Ibrahim alayhi salam. And yeah, I've just really been thinking, doing a bit of research, bouncing off some research with a few people, and just kind of all Junoon, wal Junoon funun, as they say in Arabic. So I thought, why not? Let's share it. Who else should I share it with? I could sit here and just talk to the wall. Why not talk with the awesome social media audience that is there? So I thought I'd share my craziness, right, milakura, with you guys. And other than that, yeah, I wanted to discuss this thing about this thing of, what I call a kind of the stage of, I don't know, cognitive puberty. It's like a mental maturation, mental maturity stage. And I feel that it ties into this sometimes a kind of depressive bitterness with certain people. I thought, chalo, I'll share a few words on that. How to be happy, basically. Why not? Which then ties into what I'd like to discuss at the end as well, about none other than our beloved people. Kaha Raja Bhoj, our beloved Gangu Teli. So I want to speak a bit about that later on. As you guys probably know, there's been Gangu Teli's back at it. Basically, I'll come back to this, but it's to do with my discussion on Isaac Butterfield's joke, and then the basically yeah, I said a joke and phas gaya yaar. Like hell have I, but still I thought, yep, I gotta discuss that, and all these haters who come immediately out of the woodworks. So why not, people? Why not? So, but other than that, I'll be taking your questions as well. Yeah, let me start off with a cold drink, पीने से कर चुका था तौबा मगर जलील पीने से कर चुका था मैं तौबा मगर जलील, बादल का रंग देखकर नीयत बदल गई. I had done tawbah from drinking, as the poet says. It's just that I took a look at the stormy clouds, and my intention, my good intention, said, what the hell. It happens, people. This stuff happens. So, what are we taking a look at? Did I bring up any? Let me see. Yeah, but regards to Mel, maybe, I don't know what that is. Just goes crazy, out of character. I go out of character. Yeah, I tell people, look, this is a craziness. Why not, huh? Sanity is overrated in this world. So what was there? Was there any... No, I don't think I'd brought up any. Let's get straight into it. Oh, those of you that haven't caught up with the latest MindTrap, bring that up for you guys. And that was with Ustadh, Ismail, Shaffi. We discussed, it was quite an interesting discussion. I mean, it was different. It's not so much like the other kind of, it was more to do with sometimes, to do with the Tablighi Jamaat, the phenomenon of the Tablighi Jamaat, the rift that's been caused, community perspectives. We spoke on it doesn't have to be teenagers, but young people and their problems, our difference of perspectives on that. We spoke about Palestine and the thing, any potential treaties or solutions and to Palestine. So yeah, and let me just begin, people. In fact, let's begin with some shairi as always, huh? Poetry, why not, people? Whilst the rest of you are tuning in, clicking like, clicking share. Allah, Allah, Allah. Some love for you people. The legend, Hazrat Jaun Elia. Hi, 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 hi. When I listen to Jaun Elia,
जो कर गया हूँ मैं सबके दिल से उतर गया हूँ. मुझे गरज है मेरी जान गुल मचाने से, न तेरे आने से मतलब न तेरे
जाने से. वाह.
शहर है चेहरों की तमसील, सबका रंग उतरना है. ठीक है खुद को हम बदलते हैं, शुक्रिया मशवरत का चलते हैं
यार. Thanks for your advice. Now we'll be on our way.
खुद ही वो आ गया था दिल के करीब, हम हैं मारे हुए सहूलत के. है सब एक दूसरे की जुस्तजू में, मगर कोई किसी को भी मिला नहीं. तुम मेरा दुख बांट रही हो, मैं दिल में शर्मिंदा हूँ. तुम मेरा दुख बांट रही हो, मैं दिल में शर्मिंदा हूँ. अपने झूठे दुख से तुमको कब तक दुख पहुंचाऊंगा. बंद बाहर से मेरी जात का डर है मुझ में, मैं नहीं खुद में, ये एक आम खबर है मुझ में. मैं भी अब खुद से जवाब तलब, वो मुझे बेसवाल छोड़ गया. जब्त करके हंसी को भूल गया, मैं तो उस जख्म ही को भूल गया. कह मारते ही दीवाना गमे जिंदगी
को भूल गया. Vah, people. Jaun Elia, who I feel was a saint of our recent times, somebody who many people won't be able to perhaps fathom. Perhaps at times he appears an atheist. But the depth of understanding that he had. You see, this is it. People, something? People misjudge these poets. We're so quick to cast judgment on them. People will look at Ghalib, they will look at Mir at times, they will look at all these, Momin Khan Momin, they will look at Dag, and they will say, these people corrupt, alcohol, women, questioning sometimes the God and what, the works, or religion, questioning religion. And people judge them. Sorry, was I going somewhere with this? I'm joking. No, you see, people, what it is? It's our perspective. It's interesting. I was listening to this person give an explanation of Ghalib. And Ghalib has a famous poem where he says that, Zere saye masjid kharabaat chahiye. Kharabaat is a place of ruin, but it was used often from the Arabic term kharab. But it was used often like that, kharabaat, as a place to drink out, where people, they were just left and they drank alcohol, and it was like their kind of bar, but like a ghetto bar. So they called it kharabaat. So he says, Zere saye masjid kharabaat chahiye. That I want a kharabaat, this kind of impromptu bar and pub, to be set up in the shade of the masjid. So यहाँ पर people को तकलीफ हो गई. So people are like, look at this kafir, kafir, this casting judgment on him. But, what if you looked at it the other way? That you see, everybody's so easy to say, everybody's so easy to cast judgment, to say, well, this, look, oh my God, he wants to corrupt the masjid. But the way this person was explaining it, that if you look at it from the other perspective, what he's saying is that, okay, I drink, but, from there, I want to go to the house of God. Like, is God not my God as well? That should I not, can there not be a house of God close to me? Is God exclusive just for the mullah? Or do I not have, is he not my God as well? So it's so beautiful when you look at it from the other perspective. You're looking at it from this, oh my God, he wants this close to the masjid. He's looking at it from the perspective, okay, I'm going to be here, but I want to go to the masjid as well. Like, not for the sake of the clergy, but I want to go to worship God as well. See, everything comes down to how you look at things, your perspective. But it's just, there's a line that Mir has, where he says, Mekade se abhi masjid mein aaya hai Mir. That from this drinking place, Mekada, Mir has now arrived at the masjid. Mekade se abhi masjid mein aaya hai Mir. Ho na lagzish kahin. Mehfil hai ye beganon ki. Ho na lagzish. Lagzish means an impropriety, where you do something out of place. You do something wrong. That's wrong for the situation you're in, or the kind of atmosphere, the environment. An impropriety. Wait, let me have a sip. So Mir says that मैं कदे से masjid में अभी आ गया है, that he's come from there to here. That be careful, lagzish na ho, that we don't want to kind of act wrongfully. Nobody, as in not him, but other people and him as well. We shouldn't act wrongfully. Mehfil hai ye begano ki. That this masjid is the gathering of those who are lost. Meaning the religious crowd are a toxic crowd. That's what he's trying to say. But yeah, let's, on that joyful note, let's now come to some of your questions. Right, now what's going on with the whole presidency? Yeah, I don't know. It's crazy. Donald Trump, You know, I feel in some weird way that he's probably going to get re-elected anyway. But, yeah, I mean, I don't. It's a shame, but it just goes to show the day and age we live in. Yeah. Let me just bring the comments. Right, what do you think about Shaykh? Whoa, all these questions. Guys, stop spamming with the questions. Right, so yeah, I don't know what will come of the elections, but I unfortunately feel and fear that it will be Donald Trump. Right, so Ghalib Noor says, is something morally good because God commands it? Or does God command it because it is morally good? I think what you meant to say was, or is it, oh no, sorry, you did say it right, you said it right. Is something morally good because God commands it, or does God command it because it is morally good? Oof. Euthyphros. Ha 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 ha. The dilemma of Euthypro, huh? This takes us back to Socrates and Plato. Plato writing about Socrates, that Euthypro was at the steps of the court. Law courts. Right, so, and he was taking his own dad to court. Why? For impiety. You know, as these neo-mullahs, this kind of neo-mullah piety, he was taking his own dad to court for not being a muttaqi enough, for not having taqwa. I'm not making this up, this is actually Euthypro, the dilemma. So here he encounters Socrates and they have this discussion, which gives rise to this dilemma that is this philosophical question, that does God command something? Does God, it's also in theology, this is referred to as the divine commandment theory. You think this is just Mufti sitting here talking about Ghalib and Jaun Elia? I'm talking about theology, people, philosophical theology. Right, so the divine commandment theory is that does God command X because it is good, or does X become good only because God commands it? So the Ash'a'ira, the Ash'aris and the Muhaddithin, they go to the fact that there are no morals in this world. Objectively, they only exist because God commands them. You know, this is really quite dumb and absurd, really. If I say dumb, people get upset, these people, they nazuk misaj, these people temperamental. And then they're gonna say, oh, look, the Dajjal, what he said, the
Dajjal with a small d. Or we can say mini Dajjal, no problem.
But
I'm one Dajjal with a big D. Okay?
You're teasing me. Shaykh Yasser, I'm big D. So, right, so the thing is that people will get upset, but it's absurd. It is absurd to say that there are no rights and wrongs. Like, we don't understand what's right and wrong. We only know it because God has said it. Look, that's absurd. Now, the Maturidiyah and, and really Imam Abu Hanifa as well. But the Hanafiya do a disservice to the Imam. Wallahi, it hurts to see the legend of an Imam Abu Hanifa and the followers he ended up with. Their betrayal of his was no less than what Judas did to Jesus. Honestly, they really betrayed Imam Abu Hanifa. बहुत जुल्म किए हैं, तोबा तोबा. Can't kiye hain kya? So this is, you see, they really betrayed him. They ditch his opinions in almost 50% of the madhab. They try to make him conform to latter day institutionalizations. They reject his free thinking. They kind of turn a blind eye to his critical insights, his critical thought-provoking analysis, or his critical thinking. They dumb it down. But yeah, it's an ultimate betrayal, ultimate. But yeah, this is why I was never really fond of the Hanafis, to be honest. I love Imam Abu Hanifa, though. He was a legend of a man, honestly. May Allah have mercy on him. لَقَدْ كَانَ مِنَ الْإِسْلَامِ بِمَكَانٍ. Allah. His insight far exceeded his day and age by a millennia. But by millennia, sorry. He was so ahead of his day and age. But yeah, unfortunately, his madhab was nothing short of Islamic rabbis. But yeah, so anyway, coming back to, but he had noticed this, so he had taught that right and wrong is in this world. We as humans have a morality that we can kind of pick up on. But, and that's what I would say. I would argue, in line with what Imam Abu Hanifa was saying as well, that look, human beings, Allah has created us with a fitrah, which the Qur'an teaches, that is a fitrah, that Allah, that He had created us with this kind of, with this instinct, okay? Now, He has, where we have a base instinct, like language, I associate it with the language instinct. So we have a very base, raw, kind of this compass, which we build upon based on our social atmosphere, environment. And then I also feel what adds to it as a hyperstructure is, so this is here, but what adds to it at a 3D level is social collective consciousness. So I feel that like in the hadith, that there is a collective consciousness, that al-arwah junudun mujannada, the arwah of people have a kind of, that the souls, I refer to as consciousness, it is connected at some level. It may be a very low level, but that there's a sense of feedback, like there's a feel, like a zeitgeist, that this kind of like, this zeitgeist kind of feeling of the age, that we know that certain things to be right and wrong without having been taught them. So yeah, that's my impressions of that. Let's move on, people. Is the fitrah corruptible? Fitratullah allati fatara an-nasa alayha. That this, you see, Islam invented secularism. Right, so, yeah, I guess the fitrah is corruptible. Anything is, but I don't know if corruptible is the right word, but what we mean by that is that what you build upon it, you can kind of stretch it and take it in directions that are maybe, and then sometimes some people are warped as well. You do get twisted people, psychopaths, serial killers, stuff like that. So yeah. Mufti Abu Layth, what do you think about Shaykh Saleh Al-Fawzan? What is your view on him, the manhaj? Right, Okay, the fitrah is bestowed upon us by Allah, therefore one can conclude that morality is decreed by Allah. You see, if you mean, does Allah decree morality in the sense that Allah created the whole cosmos and therefore anything that happens ultimately is a doing of God, then by that understanding, of course, it's ultimately, but Allah sets forces in nature at play. He creates within us this understanding of instincts. It's like saying our language is given to you by God. Our language is given to you by God. So now I would feel that it is a divine gift from God that we as humans have language. Language with a capital L. Capital L. Right, so I feel that language with a capital L is a divine gift, but it's absurd to say that God has given you your language, that English is now given to you by Allah. That's just dumb. So it's the same thing with morality, with fitrah. It is an instinct, which language is an instinct. So in this understanding that I'm saying that language is an instinct, as many psychologists do say as well. Right, so what is going on? Is it shirk to leave Islam, and is it ever possible to come back to Islam? Of course, Islam welcomes everyone. Islam isn't the property or the monopoly of any individual, sect, or denomination. God is not the property or monopoly of any faith. Right? Allah is above faith. Allah is above institutions. He's above the clergy. He's above these mullahs and priests. And you see, it is God that you are speaking about. And Islam always has its arms wide open for anyone who wishes to come this way. So, but people feel that, this deen is somehow their dad's deen. They do. They genuinely feel that this is. I'll speak a little later on. Somebody sent me a link of this, since this Baba Farid Gangu Teli had made this tweet, sent me a link to Asim Qureshi, and I know I've spoken about him in the past, and we'll speak later on in the Masala segment. But this thing of making this comment that he feels so sad that these books of Islam behind me on these shelves are so close to me. Abbe mere chache tu aake par. Come on, you come and read them. Oh, I forgot. You don't know how to read Arabic, do you? You extremists. These extremists, this is the thing, and they feel, you know what it is, not just him, but people in general, they feel that Islam is their dad's deen, that they somehow have some monopoly over it. This is Islam is as much mine as it is yours, as it is anybody else's. There is no authoritative clergy in Islam. And yes, like it or hate it, unlike many of these people, I am qualified in Islam. That really burns people, though. I clearly outrank them. They can call me whatever they want. They can call me, lost, corrupt, whatever. I never claim to be pious. But I clearly, they pull out the ID, I outrank them. So, speaking of hierarchy, Oqat mein raho, Oqat mein. Stay in your lane, man. This one not your lane. This one for the big boys, those who have actually studied Islam. I love it. I love it. You know something, I have to say, it is the greatest thing, greatest blessing of my life has been that Allah enabled me to study this deen and then empowered me to navigate through it independently, and granted upon me, Allah, the ability to have this status of a mufti. That I tell you, because these people, had I been at the mercy of these kind of people, they would have crippled me. They would have chucked me out of this deen like they would thousands, hundreds and thousands of others. They would have made me hate Islam. They would have made me hate Allah and His Messenger. But lillahi alhamd, Allah threw me a rope long before these fools could make their way. Honestly, it is a great joy. I must say, in this world, this has been one of the greatest joys that I continuously experience. Could the people of this life just be the souls of another existence who entered hell? Look, check this out, people. The question. Could the people of this life just be the souls of another existence who entered hell, so God granted them another chance to enter heaven? Would that explain where God gathered our souls from, the covenant? Hi. And both, you know, this person jumped straight in, you know. हंसते खेलते में खाने में आए थे फिराक, शराब पी के संजीदा हो गए. You know, this is the same thing that we suddenly we get thrusted into such deep philosophical questions. That's definitely interesting. You know, there are theories within the wider Islamic discourse. What you're speaking of is reincarnation, but not reincarnation as the other religions have it. But what you're saying is that it's the same soul, but it's coming back in a different body. But it's the same kind of personality, but it may not remember. It's being given another chance. Could there, in the greater Islamic discourse, so you have the mainstream discourse, the Ash'a'ira, the Maturidiyya, the general kind of discourse you have. But in the wider discourse, like if you go towards the more out there, the fringe kind of discourse, but within Islam, there have been actually people who have argued that this is possible within Islam, and they've actually said that the Qur'an argues it. It's really surprising if you read their stuff. They argue, they give references like where verses of the Qur'an where Allah says that He where Allah says quotes وَأَمَتَّنَا اثْنَتَيْنِ, and you gave us 2 deaths. And there's another one where He brought you to life, granted you death, brought you to life, granted you death. These things are mentioned repeatedly. They have what other verses do they have? They have quite a few verses actually, which I remember a while back reading them, and I was quite intrigued when I read them. I thought, that is interesting that their argument, although that isn't the mainstream understanding of Islam, but their arguments through these verses do seem to, it's not that the verses, I could see that they could mean that, but obviously generally speaking, people don't understand that from it. Another verse that they use is the covenant one, that when Allah took the oath from you, that this was a previous ruh dwelling that a person had. I'm just trying to think of certain verses then, but I'll look back into it and I'll quote it on some occasion. Or what I'll try to do is maybe I can if I find anybody a bit more educated on that discourse, it would be great to have a MindTrap with them. Right, somebody said Bruce DeCock. What kind of okay. Alright, somebody said Mufti never talks about Averroes Ibn Rushd. I talk about Ibn Rushd on many occasions. I've spoken about him, about my understanding of the afterlife. I've spoken about Ibn Rushd on the concept of consciousness being the ruh. I've spoken about Ibn Rushd as being the legend that he was on many occasions. I've quoted him in fiqh. I've quoted his opinions. I've quoted... I don't know what you're saying that I don't... You've just not been watching my Monday nights with Mufti, I guess. Yeah, somebody said they also quote the verse بَلْ هُمْ فِي لَبْسٍ مِّنْ خَلْقٍ جَدِيدٍ. They quote that as well. They quote yes, أَفَعَيِينَا بِالْخَلْقِ الْأَوَّلِ بَلْ هُمْ فِي لَبْسٍ مِّنْ خَلْقٍ جَدِيدٍ. That's one of the verses they quote. They quote others as well, about you gave us two deaths, and there's quite a few verses actually. You know, when they do quote them, one can think, okay, I see what you're saying about these verses. It's not that belief, to be honest with you, the belief isn't kufr. I don't think it's kufr. It's just very unorthodox, that's all. But it's not, because they're not, in my understanding, obviously I've got to examine closer what they believe. They're not saying anything that's crucially anti the beliefs of Islam. What they're simply saying is the ruh, could it dwell in more than one body? That's the question. They're not denying the ruh. They're saying the ruh is real, that is accountable to Allah, but could it have more than one dwelling? That's their question. And they say that, well, when we look at these verses, and they list so many, they say that, well, actually, it does seem to, they don't say suggest, they say it does state that you have more than one dwelling on earth. Now, those verses, okay, to be fair, do kind of suggest that, although the mainstream Muslims would interpret those verses not on their apparent. So they would give it a different meaning in saying, like, so for example, خلق بل هم في لبس من خلق جديد, that when Allah says أفعينا بالخلق الأول, did we, did we fall short when we created you the first time? So they're going to say, well, the first time meant when God created your spirits, and even mainstream Muslims don't know where that is. Like, they'll just then they'll just say, well, there was a world called the world of spirits. So if they're asked that, where is this world? Like, they wouldn't know either. They'll just be like, but maybe there was some world before. So they seem to argue. So it's not everybody uses the same verses of the Quran. They just have a different take on it. Yeah. Right. Okay. But it is different from things like Hindu reincarnation or Buddhist reincarnation. I think with Buddhist reincarnation, it's completely detached. Like, there is never a connection between the soul and the only way you can escape this and attain nirvana is through meditation and all this kind of stuff. And in Hinduism, although it's attached, but you have up to 7 cycles, or the samsara, and it's to do with karma in Hinduism. So if you were a bad person, you were then reincarnated in a suffering lifestyle. But these people, these kind of Muslims that held these views on the soul having more than one dwelling, this kind of reincarnation, it wasn't like, it had nothing to do with karma and stuff like that. And it wasn't that everybody had it. It wasn't a must either. They were just saying that the plausibility of it. Well, I think they were believing it's not plausible. It does happen, but it probably happens with only some. And it's not a must. That's what I understood. I'll have to revisit their material. Right, let's move on. Right, okay, I think I missed a super chat. You're doing it, Rock Black. Can you scroll up, please? Let me scroll up. but right, there it is. Rock Black, message deleted. Zeba ji, kya kar rahe hain aap? You've deleted his. Bechara sent a super chat and it got deleted. Let me check here. It might actually say on this script right there. One moment. I have more than one way of checking. There you go. Let me just go through here. Right, just checking if I can see the... Right, those of you that have started following, you're doing it. You're doing it. Akeem, Dujana, Sayyid al-Shafa. You're doing it. Kharabaat. Yep, okay, something... I did explain that. Mufti, your thoughts on Maulana Maududi and his works. Hamza Khalid, I'll just get to that. The most authentic book on Seerah. Ashikul Islam. Right, I'll just come to that. Let me just check. Beloved. Right, I got that one. Rock Black, is circumcision based on Qur'an and Hadith? What is your advice on raising a daughter? I am now a father. MashaAllah. Rock Black, Mabruk, Mabruk. May Allah bless you. May He bless your daughter. May He bless your family. Ameen. I wanted to say on that note as well, why were Andalusians more progressive? Okay, I'll come to that question. Okay, so we've caught up with the super chats, guys. Much love. I wanted to give a shout out. I had a message from Altaf Kareem. Altaf, you're doing it. Much love. And his son Zain, who is suffering from some disabilities, may Allah bless him. May Allah keep him forever happy and keep their family happy. I mean, anybody who's struggling or suffering or facing any such challenges in this world, may Allah make things easy for them. Ameen. But much love to all of you. Right, so right now the questions were about, first of all, Ashiq al-Islam, authentic books on Seerah. Unfortunately, there are no authentic books on Seerah, which is a shame, really, which is a huge tragedy. Honestly, it is one of the tragedies of Islam that the Muslims didn't really compile an authentic Seerah of the Prophet. Now, we do have, obviously, an understanding of the life of the Prophet, but I would advise you that read whatever you want. I mean, I take it you want in English something to read. I think that Martin Ling's book is pretty good, I think, from what I've heard about it. There have been one or two others as well that were recommended. Right, they've slipped my mind now, but I have mentioned them on some of the MindTraps. Now, what I was going to say is that when you read these things to do with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, keep in mind, people, let me tell you something. If you come across anything that is suspect, and especially if it sounds like a cultural thing that would facilitate things for certain people, know that it is an addition that has been placed there to facilitate some things for the clergy. I'm serious when I say this. When you see certain people trying to say, oh, the Prophet behaved in a certain way towards Jewish people or towards Christians, this is not from the general Seerah, because you will have a general Seerah, you will have the Qur'an, you will have these things, the life of the Prophet. Now, you can kind of piece together a picture, but if you find anomalies, like people trying to say that he married a child, this does not fit in with the character of the Prophet ﷺ or that day and age. Oh, don't listen. This is nonsense as well, that, in that day and age it was okay. It wasn't. Where were these other children then that they were marrying? Who else had married a child? So do not buy into this palaver. when they say things like, oh, and the Prophet forcefully took slave girls, this is just because people wanted to do this later on. And they facilitated certain hadith. They allowed them, they allowed this tradition. Sometimes they just kind of got stuck with it. Sometimes they wanted it because it was politically in their favor. And there were other occasions where they maybe weren't in its, like, you know, maybe they wouldn't have advocated for it, but because there was so much politics involved in that book, like Bukhari. Now, because people put Bukhari above the Quran in the real world, even though they won't say we do, but in practice they do. So Bukhari is either above the Quran or it is on a level with the Quran to these, especially to these Wahhabis. Right now, to these people, sometimes they may not be interested in that particular hadith, but they're stuck because they have to promote the book. They get stuck. So now they say, well, so then they just justify the action. So there's a ridiculous hadith in there that the Prophet tries to wrongfully touch a woman. Now they will just go, so what? Well, that is them and their sectarianism. Be wary of it. So when you see these kind of little stories, use your common sense. That's what I would say. Okay. Yeah, and it's true, they fabricated so many hadith to facilitate things, to empower certain kings, to do stuff like, and they used to do this all the time. I'm not saying all hadith are fabricated, they're not, but you can tell usually, you know, if a trained eye can see. Now somebody may say, well, Mufti, if a trained eye can see, you're going to say, tum hi trained ho ka? Is there nobody else who's trained? I would say that's not true. They are trained, but then they are conditioned to not pick up on these things. You see, they're trained, but then their critical faculties are dumbed down because of sectarianism. They're not allowed to question. So somebody had asked me a moment ago, what do you think of Saleh Al-Fawzan, Shaykh Saleh Al-Fawzan? Now, obviously, he's a Shaykh. You know, I'm not denying that he's a Shaykh. He's not a Shaykh. He's a Shaykh. But he's a raving mad Wahhabi. You know, at the end of the day, these people are bad news. Like, okay, I'm not saying he is a horrible person. He may be a nice person. But the teachings that they push are teachings of hatred, are teachings of division. The teachings of, even towards the Prophet, like the side of this picture they paint of the Prophet and push it. It's one of killing people, one of just to facilitate their things, you know. So this is it, because Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab al-Najdi, their great grandfather, their dada, he's not the actual grandfather, but the great, he's the one, the founder of the movement, because he began his movement on bloodshed, and they praise him, they highly praise. But I'll come back to this in my Masala segment. But yeah, let's go to some of the questions, the super chat. The question on circumcision. Circumcision is introduced through Ibrahim alayhi salam. And it's not in the Quran, and it's not clearly in the Sunnah. It is in the Sunnah there, as in the Arabs practice it, and it is mentioned as part of the fitrah. Now, what does that mean as part of the fitrah? So, it would be understood that this is seen as a natural thing. To be fair, me as a person, I do advocate for circumcision. Obviously, this is for males. Definitely not for females. But I do advocate for circumcision. Just the health reasons on those grounds, and the fact that, okay, it is an identity aspect, or it's become an identity aspect of Muslims. So I would advocate for it on that ground. If we're just to speak on the basis of the Quran, then there's nothing in the Quran that speaks of circumcision or anything like this. Now, we know that Abraham, it begins with Ibrahim alayhi salam. Now, I feel that You see, it's definitely inherited. Ironically, this is now going to come as a bit of a shock. It's inherited from the pharaohs. This practice was actually the oldest human civilization to practice circumcision were the pharaohs. It's not. It's an Egyptian ancient practice which is documented with the ancient Egyptians in their hieroglyphics. So it's known that they did it, and they did it because they thought it was a cure for something, but it wasn't actually linked to what they thought, but it became a practice that they had. Now, it's only when Ibrahim alayhi salam comes back from Egypt that he then practices circumcision. And so this is where it begins. So it's definitely inspired by the kind of pharaoh kingdoms and the legacy of the pharaohs and the Egyptian heritage, but it becomes then with Ibrahim alayhi salam part of the millah Ibrahimiyya. So people from him forward also practice that. So you would have had the Judaic tradition, you would have Jesus would have been circumcised, and you would have had from the Ishmaelites, from Ismail, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the Arabs, for the most part, were circumcised. They used to also practice circumcision. So I do advocate for it based on its health reasons, based on the fact that it has a connection with this whole this kind of heritage, and it is today an identity thing for Muslims. Yeah, but it's not something that is so clearly expressed in the Quran. No, sorry, it's not in the Quran at all, but not clearly expressed in the Sunnah. It is mentioned, but more so as an act of fitrah, seen as a natural thing to do. But people do today see, like in Urdu, they will say Musalmani. They call it Musalmani, like to become a Muslim. It's like that foreskin is the piece of kufr. Kufr ko hata do yaar. Musalmani bithana. So this thing of making somebody into a Muslim in Urdu, in Pakistan or India, this is what it is, circumcision. So and another word for it, interestingly enough as well, in our language, they say sunnat, quite widespread. They say sunnat karna, and this is another one in Urdu that is used as well. So that's fascinating. Right, this super chat here. Mufti, have you read The Way of the Superior Man? I have, I think, as an audiobook. Is that the... If I recall correctly, yes, I have. Right, no, I forgot your... Why were the Andalusians more progressive than others? Well, I think the Andalusians, they lived in a very multicultural atmosphere. Plus, because they were cut off from the rest of the politics. They had their own politics, don't get me wrong, but they were cut off from the Far East and the Middle East. So it allowed them to kind of, and because they were part of the European continent, so a lot of them, for example, spoke Latin. A lot of it's interesting actually, in Shaykh al-Khushani's Fuqaha Qurtuba, with his Tabaqat of the Fuqaha, right? In there, whilst he's he's speaking about a particular family in Cordoba, and whilst praising them, he says that, oh yes, they're a family of, these great scholars and dedicated to fiqh and all this. And then he says that, and he says the siblings are all scholars and judges, and the father was, and blah, blah, blah. But then he mentions an interesting point. He says, he says it's quite fascinating that they only spoke Arabic. Like they didn't speak Latin and things like this. It's interesting, you see, like, because you wouldn't know that now until you read these things. You realize, acha. So the fact that he found it ajib, he says that this is like an ajib thing. That wow, that it's like saying, you know, people, if you said here, oh my God, like they struggle with English, but they're born and raised in England, you'd find it ajib. So in that way, he's doing ta'ajjub from this, that wow, you know, and the fact that they only speak Arabic, it's quite, you know, it's interesting. And I found that, like, wow, that's an amazing insight that he's kind of collected for us. Kaleem Ahmed, you're doing it with the super chat. Much love. Salam Mufti. On the latest Rogan podcast with Graham Hancock, they present evidence that show psychedelics played a big role in ancient Greece and Christianity. Do you feel that they had any role in Islam? I've spoken about this on many occasions. I feel that we as Muslims, for the most part, have really missed out on this. And it's unfortunate because it's not necessarily something we need to miss out on. But what's happened is the clergy have kind of, you see, in Islam in some ways has a very, the way institutionalized Islam, the way it's been kind of, once it became institutionalized within a couple of centuries after the Prophet, maybe definitely by about 400 years after the Prophet, it really became a religion of legalisms, of fiqh and what is halal and haram, and this is what people became obsessed with. And the jurists are, that's what they are. You know, they are like these people that you will, you know, the kind of like the Pharisees, and these kind of rabbis that are just obsessed with little do's and don'ts lists, and they moved away from that thing of consciousness and experiences. But what did happen is that then gave rise to these people who were known as the kind of proto-Sufis, the early Sufis. These people, and they, I definitely feel that they experienced psychedelics, and they would have people like Ibn Arabi. I definitely feel that Ibn Arabi experienced psychedelics, as would have many of the, you know, people like Junaid and these other great, you know, Salikin, people who walk this path. And this is before Tasawwuf becomes really initiated, before Sufism becomes a thing. So what happens is later on you start getting these orders within Sufism becomes a thing. It becomes, and then it just becomes the very monster that it was trying to fight. Because Sufism is no different today. It is just institutionalized cults that just are all about the kind of their particular saint that they follow, and it's all about him, and it's all about this kind of cultish behavior and do's and don'ts, and it's not about consciousness anymore. You know, even though there are some, you know, they'll say do this dhikr every day, say Ya Latif 100 times a day, say this every, you know, but that's the thing, you see. If you have to be told what to do, then it's you know, that's the very problem. You know, this is not that journey. Yes. It's like trying to compel people to be critical like trying to, what you're doing is dogmatizing critical thought. As an example, it defeats the purpose. The whole purpose of this experiential transcendence was not this institutionalization. That's what so hence these great people like Bulle Shah that you get, or Rumi, Jalaluddin Rumi, or these people, Hafiz and all these, they are free of this kind of Sufism, this what you have today, like these Naqshbandis and Chishtis and Qadris and these orders, Shadhilis, and these orders are just institutions. And that is the problem, that man is born free, yet everywhere he is in chains. Allah, we need to rid ourselves of these chains, people. This is not just shackle ourselves with more. Just because they carry a label liberty. Ah, you're gullible. Have this, you want liberty, oh, that's another chain. You want freedom, that's another chain. You want spirituality, that's another chain. That's not how these things work. But yeah. Mufti, is it true that a father owns everything belonging to his son according to some hadith? Right now, okay, so there is the hadith, Anta wa maluka li abik. These things are not clear-cut laws in Islam like that. That's not the case in that particular way. Okay. So for example, let's say a child inherited something specifically. Let's say a grandfather or an uncle or somebody gave something to a particular child, just bequeathed it as part of their will to a child. That does not mean it belongs to the father. The father would just be responsible to watch over until the child becomes an adult. So these things are not to be taken as like mutlaq, unrestricted laws. They're not. They are what is known as the urf wal ada. Okay, so customarily speaking, yes, a child, the parent really has the greater ownership. That kind of makes sense. Like, let's say if you buy your 6-year-old something, now they're going to have it at home, but ultimately, you know, it is your, yes, you've bought it for them, it's your kind of thing. Because where does a child get an income from? So this is how it generally works, but it's not necessarily like that. It doesn't mean that they can, it's like, let's say there was a method where a child was gaining a certain amount of income. The parents should not be abusing that. But obviously, as their parents, if they needed, and they were taking care of the child and they needed that, what I would say is these are matters that need to be returned to the convention and custom of a time. They are not laid out in stone. All right, what's Salam Mufti? Your thoughts on why did Jacob say... Right, okay, let's speak a bit on this whole... I did want to mention this whole thing about Ibrahim alayhi salam. Now, this may tie in with what some of you are... asking. Now, I've been really looking into all of this, this whole thing of Ibrahim alayhi salam. It's really been quite fascinating. I'm just seeing if there were any. This is ongoing research, but I'm really kind of inclined this way that, you see, I feel that Ibrahim alayhi salam, because I've been thinking this whole thing, Ibrahim alayhi salam going to the palace of the pharaohs, and this whole thing, what is this all about? And I feel that in some way, this was like a meetings of two great worlds. Okay. Because in that day and age, the pharaohs were this long, continuous, incredibly rich legacy of human civilization. They had been going on for thousands of years, this was what they obviously claim to have been going on for much longer, but with these philosophies and buildings, and they were really seen as something. They had rulers that had, pharaohs who had ruled a huge part of the world. They had a history of all of this. So now, or a substantial area, that's what I mean. So Ibrahim alayhi salam, I feel, right, now I have to pause this here. There's a question mark. You see, Ibrahim alayhi salam goes in and he meets the Pharaoh. Now the question here is, how does Ibrahim alayhi salam get to meet a Pharaoh? A wanderer who comes in from the Canaanite deserts, and he comes across and he gets FaceTime with a Pharaoh. So this is in the Bible, in Genesis, that he goes and he meets the Pharaoh. And then not only that, obviously the Pharaoh marries his wife, but then the Pharaoh gives him a gift. He gives him gifts, and he's like very generous with Abraham. Now the question is that even the regular Egyptians could not get FaceTime with the Pharaoh. If you were an Egyptian and you said, I want to go meet the Pharaoh, they'll be like, acha, acha. They'll be like, acha. Baab ka ghar hai? Nahi, aa jao. So the question, how does a wanderer that's coming through a desert get FaceTime? The Pharaoh, and this thing, he was so intrigued to marry Sarai. This is why. Come on, does that really add up? This guy, Pharaoh, who has a kingdom, has countless women. Women are not a problem. Like, he can have any woman he wants. He's all of a sudden so obsessed with some stranger woman that he's never met. Like, really, like this, does this add up to the critical mind? Now, to answer that question, we need to go back to the origin of Abraham. Now, I've been thinking, you see, in the Bible, it mentions that Abraham, his family were from the Ur of Chaldees, okay, the Chaldean, these people, they were from but it mentions that their origins were from the East. Now, I've said this before a while back on my on my Monday nights, but I've been looking into it a lot more recently. I feel that Ibrahim alayhi salam was from the Indus Valley civilization, as in his ancestors or his parents would have been from there. Whether he may have also been there as a young person. Right now, the Indus Valley civilization are some of the oldest civilizations known to man. Okay, they found certain things that when they've dated, go back to potentially 8 or maybe even 9,000 years ago. Those civilizations may have been some of the most advanced civilizations. They had some form of accounting. They had a script which still hasn't been deciphered. They ruled without kings. Which is amazing. They apparently had no standing army. Which goes to show a civilization along the Indus River, the Saraswati River, the great river of India in the past, which dries up about 1900 years, 1900 BC. So after that, and it had thousands of settlements around the river, including the great settlements of Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, and you've got Rakigiri and all these different great settlements, but it had loads of smaller settlements as well. Now, these people disperse, and I would feel that it may have been that Ibrahim alayhi salam may have been from a priestly background. It's very likely. This is speculation, but I'm inclined towards it, because in the Bible it mentions that his wife who he marries is a priestess. Now, why am I saying this? Well, You see, it's interesting that even the examples that are given in the Qur'an of when Ibrahim alayhi salam questions his people, he questions them about the celestial bodies, the sun, the moon, a certain star, and it disappearing now is not, how can these things be deities? And it makes sense that you see the Indus Valley civilization, it's much later, it's around after, as the great civilization is dissipating, that statues are introduced. They weren't otherwise, previously, they have no statues of gods and things like this. Now, one thing that the priestly class would know is astronomy and their version of astrology, like all these stars. It's something that the Indians have been so deeply into. Now, who else was so obsessed with this kind of astrological astronomy? It was the Egyptians. Now, it would make sense if Abraham was from a priestly background and he had great knowledge of the stars. Because it mentions one Sarai was already a priestess. When they go to Egypt, this is what gives him FaceTime with the Pharaoh. Because the Pharaohs are obsessed with the whole astronomical layout, and their pyramids are built in line with that. And you see, and I did have some quotes actually, if I have some here. It's interesting, by the way, that Aristotle, who's before Jesus, when he writes of the Jewish people who are the descendants of Abraham, he says that their origin was with the Indian people. And there was Megasthenes, who was sent to India 300 years BC, before Christ, who writes of that this is where he claims that the Jewish origins, the Jewish being going back to Isaac and Abraham, come from. And this is 300 years before Jesus, they write this. The Magi people trace their books to Ibrahim. They have a certain tradition called Kesh-e-Ibrahimi. This, they claim, comes to them from Ibrahim. And it was the Jesuit missionaries who, when they went to India, initially noticed the name of Brahma and Sarai, his consort in Hinduism, correlating with the English names Abraham and Sarai. First, Abraham in the Bible is called Abram, and then the Lord asks him to change his name to Abraham, and Sarai to Sarah. So, and I'm not saying that Abraham was their god Brahma, but what I'm saying is those names would have then inspired people to have similar kind of names. So, right, so this, and also what's interesting is Voltaire, the great philosopher, he wrote how Abraham had descended from a Brahmin priestly class. So these were some of these interesting notes, how people had said even the of Chaldees, of the Chaldean people, they said, some people had speculated the Chaldean, or what they said, the Chaldean was called Dev, and it was from some Hindu origin, as in the people of these. Because was on the road to India, by the way. So through Persia, if you're going to India, that would have been the road. So anyway, the reason I mention this is because, you see, what if Hajar, who is then given to Abraham as a gift, you see, many people had said Hajar was a slave. Because maybe to the outsiders who didn't know her, this is what they assumed her to be. But what if she was actually a priestess, as some people had claimed? She was an equally ranking priestess of the Egyptian order that was given to Ibrahim, because he was of this background, somebody who had great knowledge of the stars. Because when they go to Mecca, you see, where they build the Kaaba, now this is where I'm trying to, this is interesting. What is one of the greatest stars that appears on the horizon in the south is Canopus. Now, Canopus is who according to the Egyptian legacy, it is what the pyramids were also built in. They're not built in line with Canopus, but they are also, they have some association, because Canopus is interpreted to be the greatest pharaoh part of their heritage is Osiris, who I've spoken about previously, maybe Uzair in the Quran. Osiris is who they feel is the star Canopus, as in he's gone up and that's him. So Canopus in the southern hemisphere is considered to be Osiris. Now that's which is the second most brightest star in the southern hemisphere? Is Osiris, okay. Now, Canopus, let me just bring this here, that you can see there in the southern hemisphere. This star, if I just bring this up, right, is what in Arabic is called Suhail. And it is the star that the Kaaba, the wall of the Kaaba, is aligned to on the horizon when it's built. So it's interesting that this star, by the way, is what in the ancient Indian literature was the southern pole star. So in ancient Hindu kind of their priestly astronomy and astrological astronomy, they spoke of two pole stars. You've got the North Pole Star, which today is Polaris, but before it was Thuban and others. Now, and they spoke of a South Pole Star, a Southern Pole Star. They called them Dhruva. But the South Pole Star, what was it? About 2,000, I believe just slightly over 2,000 years ago. It would have been Agastya. And Agastya is Canopus. It is Suhail. It is Osiris. It is exactly this same star, which was seen as one of the most powerful stars on the southern horizon. Now, I don't feel that these things are all entirely coincidental. I feel that the knowledge of these things are connected, as in, it doesn't mean that those stars have to be, like they don't bring things like good luck or bad luck or anything like this, but they are seen as, obviously to people of faith, they would be seen as something representing the divine. You understand? So when the Kaaba is built, it is angled towards Suhail, because on the horizon, Suhail appears after sunset. You would see it in that direction, right? You would see this on the southern horizon. It would be the brightest star on that horizon. And so this equally in those cultures bears some significance. And I feel that Ibrahim alayhi salam, knowing this kind of stuff, is what allowed him to connect with those pharaohs and have that FaceTime with them, for them to treat him well. It kind of makes a lot of sense, as opposed to him just wandering as a kind of Bedouin in the desert and then getting FaceTime. And then I feel the story is the same, but there's just more nuances to it. Like Hajar wasn't just some slave girl. She may have been a priestess of their order. Ibrahim alayhi salam wasn't just some person just like this who just had, wisdom of one God, but he was actually somebody who was incredibly learned about things like astrology and the stars and the celestial bodies, and he knew this kind of stuff. He was much more learned than people think he was. And he may have been much more involved with different civilizations. So this became a great meeting, a grand meeting of West meets East. And hence Allah says that Ibrahim kana ummah, that he was a nation in and of himself, that he kind of brings these civilizations to almost a point of amalgamation in some ways. And you see, even this thing of, after he then has this great meeting, he then circumcises, takes on some of their customs of like circumcision and stuff like this. But this is some food for thought. If anybody does out there watches this, that is researching this, do kind of hit me up, inshallah, and let's kind of share thoughts on it. Sorry about going on, but it's just, I've been fascinated by it. And this, what I was sharing with you, I don't know if you guys can see this there, but you'll see this is a description from, I believe it's an ancient book. You've got by Al-Farisi, one of the early astronomers, when Muslims were still speaking about the Kaaba before the medieval time, when they started to speak about mathematically how to know where the Kaaba is. Initially, they spoke about it to do with nature. How do you find the direction? You find the direction through the winds, and you find it through the stars. This is before they got very, you need the astrolabe, and you need this, and you need that. At this time, so if you read this extract as well, I don't know if it's in this, so you can see here that, look, it mentions that the first of the winds is the Sabah. This is the Muslim author Al-Farisi writing, that which is easterly of the Kaaba. And he mentions facing the wall between the black stone and the southern corner, and it blows from between in the summertime sunrise and the rising point of Canopus of Suhail, which is also Osiris in the Egyptian pharaonic kind of legacy, and it's Agastya in the Hindu legacy. So the second is the Janib, which should be the Janub, which is southerly, and it blows from the rising, and it goes on point of Canopus to the winterly sunset. Because I just found this incredibly fascinating. This was part of, I believe it was King's essay in the journal, that he speaks of religious studies, where he's speaking about the direction of the Qibla and how early Muslims used to find the Qibla. Later Muslims used to use things like geometrical stuff, but the early Muslims that are academics speak about things like using the wind and stars, because winds come from particular directions. Now, people may argue that that's not as accurate, but still, it's very fascinating, and it's food for thought, people. All right, let's move on. I don't know if I was just boring you guys. You guys are thinking, Mufti's losing the plot. Nothing new there, people. I've lost it a long time ago. But yeah, so right, what is going on? All right. Very interesting hypothesis. But I feel that, this it's, if people want to explore it, do explore it. Take it further. Let me know. I'm still researching it. I'm reading up loads on it. I've been really fascinated by, this, what is called, it's called, they call it like astroarchaeology. And it's really fascinating that how, you see, how do we know certain things in history happen? One is through archaeology, but another way is that, you see, when you want to date something, you can archaeologically, whether it's going to be through carbon dating, other kind of genetic dating or stuff like this. And what another way is this astroarchaeological means, where you get people describing certain celestial movements, and mathematically you backdate when those movements happened. And and I've been reading a lot into this, something that the ancient Indians had. So they had these texts called Surya Siddhanta, and these other these kind of texts, and there's some lectures on it. And they speak of like this South Polar star, the South Pole star, the Agastya, which is Suhail, which is Canopus. And you see, speaking of that, when it's in a particular point, we can backdate and see when that was through mathematics and through astronomical mathematics. And it's incredibly fascinating because they have it so precise. So, the way you have zodiac signs, so you've got the general cosmos split into these 12 points. The Indians, they had that, but they also had a lunar division called nakshatras. So they basically divided them into 27 points. And it's interesting when they describe this, you can now go back and see when the moon would be at that point with that celestial kind of organization. Another interesting thing you can tell, so for example, the North Star today, those of you that are into, I've been getting into astronomy quite a bit. I've been getting my daughter Layla into it as well. So it's actually yesterday we were just out there just looking at certain constellations. So we've been really getting into this, and we saw Cassiopeia, and it was for the first time she spotted it. So we were like, oh look, there it is, and we're trying to find Andromeda from this. So we've been getting into this recently, and I would advise you to. It is actually quite very fascinating. But my point is that if you the North Star today is Polaris here, so you can, from the Big Dipper, you can point out to you've got the little or the small dipper, and you can see from the little dipper Polaris will be there. That is the North Star. But if you go back a few thousand years, it was not Polaris, it was Thuban. And if you go back a few more thousand years, it was a different. So when historically, let's say they're speaking of the North Star to be Thuban, you can astroarchaeologically see the date is so many thousand years BC, that you can backdate it to at that time when they're speaking about these events. So if they say this event happened, this star was here, and that star only was like that at that particular point, it gives you some indication of when this timeline was. It's all very fascinating, I have to say. And there is the Big Dipper with the big D. Peoples, let's move on. So what is going on, people? What is going on? Right, now let's take some questions. We'll take some questions, and then I'll... What is the purpose of astronomy, Mufti? Astronomy is to understand the celestial bodies, the stars, the constellations, 88 constellations today, generally speaking. But then you have the asterisms, which are smaller groups of constellations. It is very fascinating if you get into it. Honestly, you think you can't, but once you start looking at it, you think, wow. It really is. I've been really getting into it for recently, and it's quite and it's good to, I think, get your kids into it, because to kind of show them certain asterisms, let them, like Layla can now straight away detects Mars. Like she can see Mars is so used to where it is, its point in the horizon, which part. So it will generally be from where we are. It will be like around southeast, that kind of direction. She sees that straight away. What is it? Jupiter, Saturn, usually she can detect. Things like the Big Dipper. Obviously, everybody can detect that. But Pegasus, we're learning about Pegasus recently. I was hoping to be able to see it, but it's too cloudy. So things like this, if you get your kids into it, I think it's quite fun, actually. You'll start enjoying it. You'll be like, wow. And then every single person, especially in the northern hemisphere that has existed, has been looking at these stars. That's amazing, isn't it? That, you think about it, that if they're in a way looking down, and it's like like what we're sharing, the spectacle is with all of humanity that has resided in this hemisphere. Amazing. Yeah. Somebody had asked about Ibn Rushd. Ibn Rushd traveled. You see, you can't see. This, we spoke of Canopus, Suhail, Osiris, right, or Agastya in the Hindu thing. You can't see Canopus from the northern hemisphere. It's in the southern hemisphere. Now, what's interesting, I know in the Indian tradition, they write of when you could see it, and then it went south, which is interesting when they backdate and they can tell, well, oh, these traditions must be at least that many thousand years old. Because you're right, Canopus was in the northern hemisphere and kind of went down. But anyway, Ibn Rushd had to travel all the way to beneath the equator. So he went to, I think, Marrakesh or somewhere. He had to go into Africa and south just to see. He was so curious on seeing Suhail, on seeing Canopus the star, because he'd obviously read so much about it, but you can't see it in Spain. But yeah. Right, let's move on, people. Have you heard of Kamal Salbi, Ashraf Izzat and Burnt claiming events of the Old Testament from Arabia? Dr. Ashraf Izzat is an Egyptologist. I will check them out. Shukran for letting me know. I will definitely... I'm interested in this stuff. Right, Mufti, what's the origin of the term Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah? That's fascinating because nobody really knows. Here are people saying your salvation depends on being in Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. And nobody really knows where this term came from. I find that amazing, honestly. That's so amazing that nobody has an idea where this term comes from, but yet this is how we will be saved. Now, obviously, it wasn't there in early Islam. So in the time of Imam Malik, it wasn't really there. People never used to... I mean, the term Sunnah was there, but this belief that there is a group called Ahl Sunnah, we are the main... It wasn't there. So, yeah. Some people argue it comes with Abul Hasan al-Ash'ari. It may have that. Or it definitely comes with the Ash'aris. The Ash'aris are the ones who are really Ahl Sunnah. I mean, they definitely are as well. But, I mean, they are the ones who introduced this term. We will call ourselves Ahl Sunnah. The Wahhabis today that you have, the Salafis, they weren't called initially, they weren't the kind of forerunners of Ahl Sunnah. Many people didn't, they used to call themselves, they never used to call themselves Ahl Sunnah. They would call themselves Hanbali. We are Hanbali in Aqidah. So Hanbali in Aqidah was a separate school. Some of them did used to claim we are then the Ahl Sunnah later on. And some were a bit, you know, you would get people like Isfaraini and other people who were, you know, they were kind of more open, like they weren't, like we're different, but we're all Ahl Sunnah. I accept that this is going to be, if you mean what is the Sunni today, as opposed to Shia, it would be all of these are going to fall under that, but, you know, then but really speaking, it would be the Asha'ira, those who are of that. But this is all institutionalization. Really, the belief of Islam is simple. They believe in Allah. You know, amantu billahi wa malaikati wa kutubi wa rusulihi wal yawmil akhir. This is it, really. You know, these beliefs, that is Islam. These other things, what people put on, is all part of the institutionalization process. Barbahari, that is so funny. That was hilarious. That, you see, Barbahari is the Salafi great book, Kitab al-Sunnah by Barbahari, and this whole... And it turns out that the person who wrote it... what is it? Ghulam Khalil or whatever. They used to call him the Dajjal of Basra. You've been reading a Dajjal's book all this time. Even Yasir Qadi recently, I think he came out, and I didn't watch his clip, but he had some clip on the Aqidah of Barbahari, the book, and Kitab al-Sunnah by Barbahari. I think he also owned up to it. It's not real. It's not authentic. But the person who really broke this was Bro Haji. He kind of broke this news, if you like. So, you know, al-fadlu lil mutaqaddimi. He kind of came out with it first, saying, look, I found it very fascinating. So I did look into it, and I thought, I couldn't stop laughing. I thought these bichare Salafis are going to be heartbroken, because this is their book, that this is the book to salvation, and it was written by some guy that in his day and age, officially, not only was he somebody who used to fabricate hadith, he known, he's in the books of hadith as, when people will speak of him like Dhahabi and all, they will say he was known as the Dajjal of Basra. And this is the book that is up there. That's like, you know, they're number one, like next to the Quran. They would say this is the book. And you can just imagine that guy in his grave, Ghulam Khalil, just going like, oh, it's hilarious. It's hilarious. But yeah, Bichare got done over. My super chat, Mufti. Let's see. What was the super chat? Kapil, you're doing it. Much love for the super chat. Let me just go through. I think I may have missed some. Have you watched the Secrets of Babylon YouTube video about Ibrahim? It's about the Babylon deities and sheds light on Ibrahim's origin. No, I haven't actually. I will watch that, or send me a link to it if you can. If you're on Insta or however you normally. Some of you maybe send them on Facebook to me or whatever. So, yep, go for it. Thoughts on ancient Sumeria and the Anunnaki. Yeah, the ancient civilizations, yes, of course. I mean, I think these things are just, you know, so, wow, overwhelming. I love that kind of stuff, really reading about it and learning about it. Rami Nazim, and it's going to tie into what I have to say about this, you know, when I want to speak about this cognitive development stage in life, this depressive bitterness, avoiding that and stuff like that, and happiness. With the Achaemenid and the Sassanid empires having largely been following almost monotheistic Zoroastrian creed, with them being such a vast empire, how have no hints of them being mentioned even intertextually within the Qur'an? Mentions Sabians and Jews and Christians, but how can arguably one of the most influential faiths at the time be virtually non-existent in our texts? That is a very good question, Rami. One may say that Rami question. Where's that?
Launch is bro. Rami gadi hai.
Right, so that is an incredible question. That how is it? You know, you've had the Achaemenids, you've had the. I mean, okay, one could argue that, you know, there's the interruption, the Seleucid kind of thing, but you've had the Sassanids. There is this Zoroastrian faith. How is it being marginalized or just made non-existent? Very fascinating. Why? I feel in some ways, you see, certain messages of the Quran are there because when the Quran is being revealed, it is primarily for the first community, the first recipient community. And the Quran being revealed is a make or break deal, okay, for that community. As in, they are a make or break deal with Islam. Because if they make it, Islam makes it. If they all fail, Islam will fail. It's like the Prophet saying at the Battle of Badr that, Ya Allah, if this community today perishes, Islam will forever disappear. Like, this is it. This is the final frontier. There's nothing beyond us. So now, you see, for that community, the way human beings the way human beings prosper in society, for certain messages to advance and to prosper, it is done through a competitive nature. Now, one may argue, is that whether that's unfortunate or not, but nature itself only thrives in an atmosphere of competition. That's just the way things are. It is what it is. Now, Islam couldn't be any different because it was within an environment that is trapped by the laws of nature. So what that means is that Islam was to have an identity, but it would have to have there would have to be barriers of an otherness. Because to have a concept of the self, one must distinguish the self from the other. This is like how, in basic Lacanian psychology and other things, this whole thing of when the child, for example, develops the concept of me, because the child initially feels that the mother and the me are just one, but then sees that there's a separation. Now, in a similar way, in anything, for there to be a sense of self, you must distinguish a sense of the other, al-akhar, within the Quranic discourse. Fil khitab al-Qur'ani, this is this mabda al-akhar, this concept of the other, has to be delineated. So you couldn't just, like the nature of it, you couldn't just say there is no other. There would have to be the other. And you would have to pick off some sides that you would want to draw a closeness to. And as far as faiths went, even though arguably there is a connection between Zoroastrians and Ibrahim alayhi salam, I feel that there is. I personally feel that there is. And hence the Prophet did say, you see, this is the interesting thing. The Prophet did give that kind of lifeline, that lifeboat. He put it there by saying, oh, by the way, the Majus, the Zoroastrians, treat them like the people of the book. They are that. But the Quranic discourse aligned the Muslims with the people of the book, which were mainly the Christians of the Byzantine north and the Arabian south. Because Islam, for it was kind of throwing a lifeline to some allies, potentially. Because for Islam to take off, it had to be embraced by that civilization, which was seen as, at that time, the cradle of human civilization. I mean, this is where anything that was happening in that Middle Eastern part of the world. And the Zoroastrians were kind of dying a death. So it was kind of dying out. It wasn't as... now, even though they did have a faith aspect to them, but you see, their faith wasn't as... like the way Christianity was to the Byzantines. Things like Ahura Mazda and the beliefs of Ahura Mazda and the whole Zarathustra were not seen in the same way with the Sassanid Empire. Like, they weren't about converting all their people and putting this... They did kind of have this faith themselves, but it seemed like more as a cultural aristocracy as opposed to a religion by all the people. So they weren't fussed if you were Christian, for example, whereas the Byzantines would have had a problem. Hence, all the Arabs who were affiliates with the Byzantines, like the Ghassanids, were Christian. Whereas the Arabs, like the Lakhmids, who were affiliates and protectorates by the Sassanids, were not Zoroastrian. Many of them were Christian, ironically. So the lifeline that Islam, or not the lifeline, but the rope to ally that it throws is to the Christians. Plus it sees them as closer, and so it sees it as more realistic, as opposed to throwing it to the Sassanids, because one, the empire doesn't seem to see religion in that same way. Two, even if there were some links, they don't claim to recognize those links. So I feel it was more strategic, because the first community were a make or break deal. But the Prophet ﷺ, as he sees, you see, supplying that kind of lifeboat at the same time and saying, by the way, make sure to treat these people like the people of the book. Like, don't be misled in thinking that they are not. And I find that incredibly amazing, subhanAllah. Even though many Muslims, the clergy, unfortunately failed to, or refused to is a better word, recognize that later on. They felt that, no, we're not going to treat them in that way. But really, these were the words of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This guy's a joke, man. Not gonna lie, any big ums. Oh, your big ums, any. Not gonna lie, man. This is not gonna lie, man. Aye. So, right, if you go back to any time, Mufti is 25. Hell yeah. Why not? It's only my mind that matures with age. Let's have some, you know what? Let's take some Facebook questions as well. Right, so Mufti Layth is the voice of reason. Vah, a Maliki, Lil Ibn Rushd. Geo, Meri Jaan. Right, are modern religions just a continuation of astrology, Mufti? No, you see, I feel that all religions in essence were the same kind of, what I mean is from time immemorial, there was a recognition of the transcendent. But this then manifests at different times in different ways. So with some people, it was a kind of animism. Some people, they kind of took to certain things and maybe associated it with celestial bodies. And it's like this thing I was saying about like Hinduism, like you look at their tradition, how rich it is in astrology, yet it's so abysmally sad to see what they've done with superstitions. You know, this is bad luck, that is bad luck. If this happens at this time, it's a curse. If that happens at this, you know, oh my God, this person is cursed. And when he was born, now he can't marry her because they were born at this time. And it's, you know, they took what I feel was a wonderful mathematical art of, you know, astronomy. And then they just draped it all in superstition. And this is why I said what Ibrahim alayhi salam says when he looks at the stars and he says, oh, but this, you know, it loses falamma afal, you know, it loses that radiance. See, and he says that can't be my Lord. And I think that Muslims they recognize these verses in the Quran, but they just didn't see the depth. Like, I feel that it's not that they didn't see but they just trivialized. Like, they said, oh, yeah, he's just saying, oh, the sun ain't my God. Yeah. He's just saying the stars ain't my God. Yeah, duh. You know, it's like they just took it at a duh level. But there was a lot more richness to that verse of the Quran. And they just kind of didn't really it wasn't interesting to them, I guess. Right. So, Real Madrid. I don't know who you're talking. Is this question to me, or is this your crazy juicy? I'm sorry. I don't know what this question even means. From Morocco. The days of tribes are over. I don't know what you're talking about. See, this is why you shouldn't drink. Yeah, no idea what on earth he's on about. Right, so let's take a look at some Facebook questions. Whilst that's happening, I wanted to answer. I'm just going to bring up some questions from Miss Patreoncitos. Right, so from my Patreons, you're doing it, people. Much love, as always. Right, I'll bring up here as well, actually. Where is it? Alright. There, you're doing it. People, you're doing it. You're doing it. Much love, as always. Right, so some questions from the Patreons. The concept of premonitions and whether it's true or not, and if it's true, then is it what? Then it should be, I think. Then in what ways does it manifest? Okay, so premonitions, if a person has a kind of like a bad vision or a bad feeling, usually it's to do with actual visions. So you've all watched like Final Destination and these kind of movies. I take it, where they have this vision, something's about to happen, but they see it so vividly, but somebody could just see certain things. Is there any substance to this? I think there can be, but there doesn't have to be at the same time. See, these things are from the ghaibiyat, these things we don't know. I do feel that, like I've mentioned, that the consciousness is connected. There's a kind of like a network of consciousness. The arwah, as the hadith says, junudun mujannada, that these arwah, the consciousnesses, are connected. فَمَا تَعَارَفَ مِنْهَا تَلَفَتْ. That which has some kind of, that they have some knowing, they know each other. There is a harmony, a synchronization between them. وَمَا تَنَاكَرَ مِنْهَا اخْتَلَفَتْ. And those which, there is this kind of maybe adversity, or between them, they dissipate and they kind of like digress away from one another. So it's interesting what this hadith actually means, and it baffled many people, but I feel this is what it's talking about, the souls meaning consciousness. So yeah, and you do get many stories of like where a mother will have this feeling of a child, or sometimes a mother will have a dream of something. It may not be clear, but she will have a dream that somebody's in danger. And they, on many occasions, it's been, it's beyond the, there's been sociological studies on this, and Sheldrake and other people have looked into it as well, and you can research. This is beyond the scope. It's above the laws of probability. Now, it's not always the case, so it is hit and miss, but it's above probability, which is what makes it definitely very interesting. And you get sometimes loved ones, siblings, you get people in relationships, not siblings. People might think, huh? Right. So but you get people who they know each other with a kind of strong bond, that have this, that something happens and the other person feels anxiety. And studies have been done on twins, not just identical, but just twins as well. So would they experience these things? And like I said, it's above probability, even though it's not always the case. So yeah. All right. Plato's cave I've spoken about previously, the allegory of the cave. That was one of the questions. Could I speak about that? I do feel that's an amazing, a beautiful allegory that is given, and I feel it's prophetic. It's something that are words of of divine wisdom. This whole story of the cave and the man coming out, Socrates trying to escape and come back. And it's only recently I spoke about that, so I will get that cut out as a separate clip. Now, what are the forms of bigotry against race, religion, and class system? What are the forms of bigotry against? I don't understand that question. I don't understand the question. So I'll have to answer that another time. How can we tell people that the advancement of a human being doesn't prove that God doesn't exist? I don't think we need to. You see, we don't need to prove to people whether God exists. People will have a natural yearning for the transcendent. It's not your job to prove to people that God exists. I feel this is an obsession of modern day, this kind of Dawah brigade. These people who are really just neo-Muslim evangelists. These people, this is what they feel that we have to do. These neo-Muslim missionaries, that we have to go out. They're just following the Christians who did this. Muslims never did this. Like, in history, do you think Muslims used to stand on street corners preaching, even in mixed societies, calling people to God? No. Like, when did they ever do this? When did they stand in the town halls or in the marketplaces and say things like, where is this in history? You've got 1,000 years of history. Go on, show me, when did this used to happen? Who used to stand in Baghdad or in Qurtuba or in Granada or in Ishbiliya or in Tunis or in Marrakesh or in Marwa or in Nishapur or in Shiraz or in these different places? Who used to stand there preaching like this, that there's one God, and people better believe in Islam, you better believe? People just live their lives, and Islam was an extension of their character. It intrigued other people. Yes, they spoke about Islam with people. I'm not saying they didn't speak about it. They had discussions. So people would ask them, that's different. Why do you guys do this? Oh, we worship just the one God. Oh, they worship just the one God. Wow. Okay, what's that about? They told me. But this, this kind of, I'm going to stand there, shout to people, and this is an obligation. I have to convince people that there's one God. And this is a very modern phenomenon, and it's ironic that we inherited it from the colonialists. We inherited it from our colonial masters, this thing, and we then think this is the sunnah of our prophet. Subhanallah. Irony, subhanallah, irony. Right, there's something here about fascism. Okay, a video link. I haven't watched that video link. There's a question by Suhail. You're doing it, Suhail. Much love, as always. We spoke about Canopus, the star, but this Suhail is a different kind of star. Doing it, Doc, you're doing it. In the past, Muslim scholarship was institutionally this going in the future, divergent schools of thought. Yeah, this is fascinating. That, you see, in the past, there was something known as endowments. So you had this kind of patronage where people used to patronize, not in the bad way. I know patronize is, but they would, if I say as patronize, certain people that they saw as people of potential. Now, these weren't always scholars. They may have been artists. They may have been poets. They may have been, usually it was people associated with a form of, that were kind of like the literary potentials of that age. They were seen as the artists of that age. I won't say celebrities, even though they were celebrities amongst them as well, but they were seen as, that's what they were seen as. So why would people patronize them? Well, because it's what rich people did. And this was one of the ways. So rich people it was part of their club, you see, that people want to be associated with enlightenment, or they want clever people around them, or they want this kind of stuff in the past, especially. So, they want poets. They want these people to be in their gatherings. So what they would do is patronize, give them a stipend, give them a kind of, like you're saying, it's not a salary, but it's like an endowment to say, well, it's a grant, basically. They would give them financial grants, which were based on an annual basis, or sometimes maybe monthly, but usually it was more than monthly. So they would do it like annually. They collect this money, and the point was you write books. I tell you what, you carry on writing your book, obviously, which means you won't be able to make a living. So here is all these thousands of dinars. Now, that was one way. Another form of endowment, these in Arabic were called the waqf, or sometimes they called hubus as well. So now these waqf, or the plural awqaf, another form of them was that people, so you had personal patronizing that rich people would do, the endowments by aristocrats or kings or dynasts or wazirs, ministers, or kind of like these kind of special people of prominence. Another form was where somebody for like charity would give a particular field as an endowment in the path of Allah. So they would say, for example, this field, and it generates all these foods, whatever they may be, I'm listing that as an endowment for academic pursuit. That means if you're a scholar, and they might say for the scholars of that madrasa. So imagine or the people of this mosque that study in this mosque, or for such and such city, or for such and such village or town, whoever, or sometimes to a particular family. They might say, let's say, Ibn Khaldun, he came from a family of scholars, so people know that whole family is involved in ilm. So they might say, to that family, for their academic pursuit, in the name of God, I gift these fields. And those fields were lucrative, significantly. Like they yielded an exponential amount of produce. So when that produce would be sold, obviously all belonged to that family. Now what they couldn't do is sell it. They couldn't sell the fields. They could sell the produce, and that money they would invest in that academic pursuit. So why people did these kind of waqfs for charity, for good deeds, people felt guilty sometimes. They're closer to maybe they're about to die, and they think, well, I'm giving that particular field in the name of God. And so this was another method that was done as well. And then people had their own trades as well in the past, like Imam Malik was a tradesman, Imam Abu Hanifa was a tradesman, businessman. So this is something that people did as well. They had their own trades as well. So sometimes you get all these scholars with these names, like An-Nahas, somebody who worked with brass and copper and stuff like that. And you'll get Hattab, for example, because of working with collecting firewood. And you'll get these they'll be named after their profession. And many of the Muslim scholars were also judges. So that was that was seen as a very prestigious career to be in. Today, scholars it's nothing like that. Today, it's not a dignified profession at all. To be a scholar, if you worked as a scholar, you couldn't even survive. I think it'd be useless, because especially in the UK, I think in America it's a bit more prestigious. Here, imams are paid peanuts. They pay them ridiculously poor. I don't even think they give them the minimum wage. I think imams here would probably be on maybe, it'd be ridiculous. It'd be like half the minimum wage or something. It'd be really like treated like a peasant. It's not a laughing matter, but this is why, you see, you pay peanuts, and that's what you get. You get these kind of cowboys as imams then, who, and then they just teach kids like they teach in a maktab, and that just gives them pennies once again. And so they live off a very poor lifestyle. And then some of them go into this other thing, like, we're going to take your jinns out and demons out and exorcise people, because that brings, there you go, that yields a great amount of money as well. Always, magic. We're going to cast aside this evil spell. That brings them magic and magical money. We're going to bless your house for you. So this is how these people do it today, or they just work. I would always advocate to people, anybody that's becoming a student of knowledge, or that is a student of knowledge, or that has become a scholar, I would honestly advise you to always think entrepreneurially. I would, this path to entrepreneurship, I advocate it for everyone. That you really need to get into business, invest in different businesses, start anything around you is a business potential. You're just not looking at it with the right eye. I'm telling you, it is. There's money to be made from a business perspective in anything that you could be looking at, you name it, everything around you. I could be looking at fragrances. I could be looking at, look at this product. Somebody has to get that from somewhere, don't they? If you can source it, you can sell it. Look at this. This is a chain. Somebody must have. I bought it. Thousands of people must have bought it. I mean, look at this microphone. If you can source it, if you can sell it, everything is a business potential. Gadgets, electronical products, clothing. Look, wearing a shirt, it doesn't have to be a designer shirt. Like, people just want good stuff. If you can source it from a better thing, you can sell it. It's often just in there. And so I definitely advocate that. And sometimes you haven't got the idea, another person has, and you can invest. See, that is another good way to make money. You invest with people. It's a risk, but, if it works, and many a times it does work. So I would say that these things always, like, I advise people to the path of entrepreneurship and become independent. I mean, today, as Suhail had mentioned, there are things like, people can support scholars, they can support things, like I have Patreon. Many people have these things, and people support, and that's from their goodwill. And it's, these things are great, and it shows, if anything, I suppose it's an opportunity for people to build a bond, because ultimately we're all busy in our own worlds, ain't we, in our own lives. And people sometimes, like, the amount of people, I think about this, like, thousands of people would probably watch what I'm saying, and to thousands of people, they may think, well, from their side, they may feel that they kind of know me, and in a way that's great, but in a way they kind of know me without knowing me. And sometimes people want to have a kind of bond, a personal touch, and these platforms are great for things like that. There's obviously, you get to know someone, it becomes a bit of a personal one-on-one thing, and that's good. But I wouldn't say to people to see this as your source. Things like Patreon, or these should never be your, or like YouTube, or these kind of things are great and they're wonderful, and people support your cause, and it's always helpful. But I wouldn't advise people to see that as their sole, I'm going to become an imam and that's what I'm going to do. No, like, they put that business acumen to many other ideas. But cool. I hope that helps. Let's go to MJ Juradi said, "You're the best, Mufti." अरे वाह, this ये तो आपका बड़प्पन है यार. You know, this is the greatness within you. You know. Right. So, did I miss any people arguing about the age of Aisha? Yep, the age of Aisha. How to source something? Somebody said. You see this. Look, man. The fact that you're having to ask that in this day and age. You know what? Watch a lot of Gary V. I like what he says. You know, Gary V, he swears a lot F's and bliming, and why not? But that's his. But it's real talk. You see, there's Google right in front of you. How can you ask that how to do something? I mean, you've got it right there. What is there that cannot be found? You want knowledge? There's knowledge right at your fingertips. You want business? There's business right at your fingertips. Everything the world has been laid out before you. It's the willpower. Don't get me wrong. Look, we're all lazy. I don't. You know, I'm in that boat as well. You know, I just chill as well. But I also I like to do the lazy investing. That works as well. The Lord gives. Who am I to deny His gracious? And if everything else fails, then like me, you can just become a movie critic. Guys, I want to share some thoughts on being happy. Yeah, a few people have asked me a few things like this. Look, what happens, I feel, that in life, we're on a conveyor belt. Things around you are determining your kind of your pace, your distractions. So you're in school, there's a list of, I've got to get this homework done, I've got this test coming up, I've got this distraction. And you see, the mind is in a state of, it has an ironic nature to it, the self. It longs for stillness, for a calmness, a tranquility. But ironically, it's never been trained to handle that. Because it's driven, constantly driven. It's in motion. It's driven by pleasure, by ambition, by desires, by wishes, so it's in a constant state of motion, a chase, a perpetual chase. Yet it longs for a stillness, a serenity, a tranquility. But these two are paradoxical opposites, and hence Freud speaking about the principle, the desire principle, pleasure principle, and the death principle, which is the ultimate stillness. But let's not go to Freud right now. You see, we're on this conveyor belt, and life kind of does that to you. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying that is life. So we're on this school, college, university, learning, work. People have this kind of social expectation. You should now get married. You should now have children. You should do this. So what happens when people are in their, usually it doesn't have to be, but let's say they're 30-somethings, late 30-somethings. Some people, it's their 40-somethings. What happens is, you see, at that stage, there will be a kind of, you've been through your physical puberty in your teens, but there will be this kind of mental, this cognitive puberty that you go through, which will be about the existential things, which will be about this kind of, what are greater things than this world? Now here, some people will still push this aside. So that, because it's like puberty, it will be in its own way painful, because it's like an opening. It's a emerging this kind of from this metamorphosis. So it's a mental metamorphosis. So it's going to have its kind of painful side to it. So people will brush it aside and they'll keep, they're preoccupying themselves with these little, what's happening there? I've got this little event. I've got this token thing to do here. I need to chase this up. I need to do, and those things are important as well. But see, what I advise you is, and I get that this isn't for everybody, but I advise you to kind of move from the realm of simply discussing people, discussing events, to discussing ideas and concepts. This is a much more lofty arena to be in. Now, that is a platform in which that existential metamorphosis can manifest. It can happen when you start to discuss ideas, when you start to discuss concepts, you start to understand why, people's philosophies, or you explore them, you start to have a deeper outlook on life. Now, it does come with, there will be that kind of turbulence, just as there was with puberty. But on the bright side, you will, it will pass. And you will be in a whole different realm of things. You see, if you block this from happening, what happens is you continue to, these questions still stay there. Like, you will still think of, oh my God, what is this? What is that? And what happens is the struggle weirdly becomes something else. And it leaves people, I feel, quite bitter, because they're on this conveyor belt. Life isn't really yielding much meaning for them. It's just, they're just discussing people, events, and it's just a perpetual chase that they have at that stage of life. They're in their 30s, mid 30 somethings, late 30 somethings, 40 somethings, late 40 somethings. Their conceptual growth is no different from when they were really in their late teens or early 20s. It's like, this is an approximation. I'm trying to tell you, if you don't go through this, this is what it's like. It's like being 20 something and having the vocabulary that you had when you were 6. That's the parallel, people. I'm trying to tell you, you want to engage yourself with ideas and concepts. Believe me, it will bring with it a different level of contentment. Now, and I find that so many people, sometimes they struggle then, because they remain just at this level of discussing people and events only in life. Life becomes very shallow. And then if you only discuss people and events, you then measure your own life by people and events. So you see, such and such is doing this. Oh, why, oh my God, why ain't I doing? And you find that you can't attain this inner happiness. And it results in this bitter, and you find that you'll find yourself hating on people. I'm telling you, this is another thing. If you find yourself hating on people, stop yourself. I mean, there may be the occasional 1 or 2 people that you just can't stand. Chelta hai, this happens with everyone. But if you find yourself hating quite a few people, I'm telling you, stop yourself. Just think about it. That why am I doing this? Something is wrong with me. There is a deep unhappiness within me. And I would advise you, you may say, well, Mufti, how do we embark on this, some of you may ask, others will think, yeah, kya bake hai, yeah? What is this guy just barking on about? You see, I would say that the gateway to these things, to discussing these ideas, it may be different for different people. It may be for some people art. It may be poetry. It may be philosophies. It may be other kind of things which have deeper meanings. You must, by that stage, be somebody that is treading that path. If you are in your 30s, 40s, and you are not a person that is treading these deeper paths, then unfortunately you will probably be consumed by that shallow kind of emptiness of life. And it doesn't have to be so time consuming. It could just be it could just be 15 minutes a day. But you need to kind of invest in this deeper development of yourself. It will be incredibly self-rewarding with time. So that's my, so you can branch out. It might be music for some people, but I don't mean that making noise, just a deeper realm, appreciating octaves and how they touch the soul. Because I definitely feel that music, not what some people call music, but truer, some with the elevation of the octaves, I feel that the soul responds to it. Consciousness, it triggers it. But yeah, and I genuinely would advise you that seriously embrace laughter. Wallahi, it is something that I feel that it's ironic that our society has demonized laughter. It has associated it with the madman. And I think that there's great wisdom in that. That, when you check this out, look at the universal expressions that human beings have. So this studies like Ekman in the 70s had kind of set out 6 universal expressions that were worldwide, people could see them, yeah? So that they would be like happiness, let's say, anger, there would be fear, sadness, there would be surprise, disgust. Okay, so these were the 6 that now some people put contempt in there as well. But what's interesting is out of all of these, there's most of them, if you were to, depends how you group them, but if you were to group them in positive and negative, like let's say related to joy, really that's only happiness, and the rest of all of them fall in the other camp. So it's amazing. I would feel that you should capitalize on that one. And the amazing thing about happiness and laughter is how it's so contagious. And it's unfathomable. Like we don't really understand why we laugh at things. It's true, isn't it? Psychologists, it's baffled them. We don't understand laughter. And if you had 2 people laughing amongst themselves, and let's say they're laughing hysterically and talking and laughing, if an alien was to come and observe that, the alien would assume that the laughter is the real communication, and the talking in between must be just because when people are just laughing, they're just laughing, then one person would say something, they'll laugh. One person says something and laugh. And it's not even like, to other people, it doesn't make any sense. It's like, what are they? So that's almost the actual communication that they have. And I just feel that it brings it's therapeutic. It will keep you, fresh. It will keep you lively. It will, it's anti-aging, if you like. It's restorative. It will restore. It's medicative. It will medicate you. It will, I feel that in it, Allah has hidden like innumerable gems in this ability to laugh. So don't ever underestimate it. I feel that, I know people mock me, oh, Mufti laughs, he does this, but I would rather have spent my life laughing. I would rather have a life that I lived laughing rather than, living it miserably. Definitely. Or even without laughter. That to me, that's a no-brainer. I would definitely do that. So my advice is, don't let people kind of shun you. I feel society doesn't like it. It sees it as, oh, it's not serious enough. It sees it as, if it sees you laughing, they kind of almost, it disturbs them. And I feel what disturbs them is just the inability to do it themselves. So they hate on the person that's doing it. So I wanted to share that. You get people then having these other, chasing after these other things. So to sum that up, make sure in life, as you've reached a certain age, like definitely by the time people are in their 30s and definitely beyond, that there is a pursuit of greater, of understandings of more depth. You're not just a shallow person anymore. It's great, definitely do make money, do all of these things, but still make sure you are pursuing ideas, concepts, notions, philosophies, arts. And these things will lead you to the divine. And similarly, driving that, I would say, make sure you open the floodgates of laughter. These things I can't emphasize enough. Right, let's take a few questions and then we'll have our, I know it's getting very late. Claire said, you ever just sat and tried not to laugh? You'll laugh, me and my brother. Definitely you will. Henna, same Mufti, a life without laughter is no life at all. Absolutely, absolutely. I have to stress that because I see so many people ain't like that. And it's sad. The irony, see, it's sad. It's sad. And I mentioned, I put this Instagram post and I mentioned this verse of the Qur'an from Surah An-Najm, that وَأَنَّهُ أَضْحَكَ وَأَبْكَى. And I said it's amazing, isn't it, when you think about it, that Allah begins the verse with adhaka, and it is He who enables you to laugh. He begins with laughter and then says وَأَبْكَى, and it has given you the ability to cry, because the life will give you enough to cry about anyway. So Allah begins with adhaka, and He made you laugh. But what's interesting is I said that, you see, a person crying, you see, these emotions that these universal expressions, crying is something a person can just do on their own. It's true, isn't it? If you think about it, you can just forget about the outside world. If you just pensively, like deeply in reflection, just thought about oneself, the self, it is enough to make you cry. If you think about it, it can result, it doesn't have to, but it can result in a kind of burrowing sadness almost. And it can make people have a, almost exultantly, it can make them cry almost. It results like that with people when they go into these deep, self-reflective kind of things. So the self in itself is enough to make a person cry, let alone the dunya. And the whole world out there is enough. But what's that? हम दिल के मारों का इतना ही फसाना है, रोने को नहीं कोई, हंसने को ज़माना है. That's Jigar Muradabadi. Now, but I said the interesting thing about laughter is can only be done about something about the world. It's amazing, isn't it? Like, you have to laugh about something. It's not about the self. So it truly connects you to the world. The laughter does. Whereas sorrowness can be internal. And although joy can be... People are thinking, cha, cha, cha. I think, Mufti, I think it's getting a bit too late. It is. That's rather some of my philosophical moments. Inaya, you're doing it as always. Shukran and much love for the super chat. Right, so somebody said, Ek minute. Mufti, you missed the super chat about Maulana Maududi. Right, I have answered that previously. I haven't read much of Maulana Maududi, but I've heard good things about him. I've heard some critical things, but I've heard that he was very critical, as in he advocated for critical thought. And I think he came at a time when people, and in a region where people weren't prepared for that. So that's why he gets a lot of hate. Somebody said, did he not advocate for a caliphate? I don't know. He may have advocated for a caliphate, but unfortunately, the Indian subcontinent had become obsessed by that time with this concept of a caliphate, somehow thinking that was going to restore for them a lost glory, which the Indian subcontinent was never part of a caliphate. You know, the irony is India was never part of the Khilafah. What Khilafah? Where was India? What did it have to do with the Abbasids or the Seljuks or the Ottomans it had nothing to do with them. India was a region on its own. It had its own dynasties. It had their own, the Hindu, it had the Guptas and those kind of different dynasties. And then it had the Muslim dynasties, the Lodhis, the Tughlaqs. It had the Khiljis and the different Delhi sultanates. And then it had the Mughals. But it was never a part of the other Arab world. So I don't know where, it's just this fake nostalgia because it helps people, you see. I get it because obviously colonialism, Muslims had been battered for so long, and so that it's nice to have a sense of hope even if it's false. But some story rather than nothing. Why not, huh? Why not? AA said etiquettes of making love. Huh? Yeah. Etiquettes of making यार ये where's my
एकदम इन्होंने वक्त बदल दिया, जज्बात बदल दिए, जिंदगी बदल दी. 119 पे इतनी अच्छी पार्टनरशिप चल रही थी. ओ भाई मारो मुझे, मारो मुझे, मारो.
So people, let's start. We got to start wrapping this up. So let's go to some of the masala, as always, the interesting. So as you can see, people, I had allegedly dropped myself in it. As some would say, although I would beg to differ, rather. But Isaac Butterfield's controversial joke on the Christchurch massacre. So, those of you that are aware, I had done this a while back, but since this clip was shared out, you got a bunch of people that were like, what the hell is going on here? So obviously, before any others, you had Baba Farid Gangu Teli. He made a clip straight away. As you can see it here, it was being shared by, this here is, it was being shared by Asim Qureshi here. And we'll come to Asim Saab as well in a moment. So initially, this is being shared by Baba Farid Gangu Teli saying, "Oh my God, oh, Mufti, you know, what the hell, this Dajjal, Murtad, Kafir, and this whole clip." So I'll bring you up to speed on the clip. You guys can watch it. So there's a number of issues that I don't know which is the key issue, what bothers them more, but there's a number of issues. One is the topic that they're saying, why did I advocate for freedom of speech? Okay. Two, they're saying, this is the key issue. Why did I state that humor is sacred? बहुत तकलीफ हुई बाबा. So, Gangu Teli. So, why did I say humor is sacred? This was number two. What else? Why did I grin at that video clip? So there's a smirk. There's like a, at the end of that clip, when I play it and I comment, when he cracks the punchline about the taxi drivers, I kind of grin or something. So these were the problems. I just want to say before anything, look, I'm kind of flattered. Yeah. Mixed emotion, you know, this one, right? Because why, you might ask that. Look, Gangu Teli, yeah, he was somebody that was dedicated to an entire sect. Now, I don't support that. Obviously, I don't support him, nutcase Wahhabi. But I mean, I don't support this obsession with against the Shia, right? So, obviously, we have our differences theologically. We have different understandings than the Shia. But look, at the end of the day, people are who they are. You know, we should try and build some bridges. We need to get by as human beings. The Shia will have different perspectives. We will have different perspectives. You know, okay, if I'm with a Shia person, I just won't want to discuss on things that may just lead to an argument. Let's leave it and just talk about the things that we do have as common, or just talk about something else. But we shouldn't be spreading hatred. Because look, by hating on people, they're not going to stop being that. You know, if I say, oh, I don't like Shia beliefs, so I know, let's hate on them. So by hating on them, somehow the Einstein logic is they're going to stop becoming Shia, or stop being, Shia, which is dumb, because that's not how this works. So, exactly. So I feel that we should build bridges and not kind of hate on, especially since most Muslims are just born Muslims. They're just born into it. So, you know, yeah, so anyway, but he was Gangu Teli, Baba Fariduddin Gangu Teli. He was dedicated to an entire sect, the Shia sect. This is what made him, basically. He wouldn't speak on other issues. He wouldn't speak on, obviously, I mean, why is there to... See, the issue is people want to be relevant, but they don't know what makes them relevant. They don't... Remember what I said about delving in ideas, in things... This is above them. They can't appreciate art, can't appreciate poetry, they can't appreciate... where's this? There it is. Acha. Sorry, Gangu Teli sending some jinn there. They can't appreciate music, they can't appreciate life. So, I know, how else can I get clout? Let's chase, but what can we do? Let's hate on a sect. So his whole making was part of this Wahhabi group that just hated on Shia, did refutations on Shia non-stop. What's interesting is he would never criticize the Saudi regime. Obviously, Bahrain is not allowed to. No, MBS. Mwah. You, Riyal. Cha. Would he ever criticize the Bahraini government? Oh, toba. Gustakh akya. Kitte ja lariya. No. But he would hate on the Shia anyway. He'd hate on the Shia. That gave him his fame. And so he got a huge bunch of following. The Salafis promoted him like mad. And Salafis, come on, $, It's not like me just sitting here using my internet. This is actual dollars and, anti-Shia rhetoric and promoting him. So he's had, thousands of followers. And so these people, they left all of that. Left all of that to focus on who? A different sect? Sufis? Ibadis, Ash'aris, to focus on who? Politics, Trump, Middle East, who? Yours truly.
एकदम इन्होंने वक्त बदल दिया, जज्बात बदल दिए, जिंदगी बदल दी.
He dedicates himself to just me. I thought, wow. I won't lie, I am flattered. Because, this, you gotta give it. You Gangu Teli, you're teasing me. Gangu Teli. There he is, people. There. My beloved. Oh, Gangu Teli. High five. So I am flattered, I won't lie. This is now to get views, these people have to talk about me. I thought, wow. Kya baat hai. As in that movie, the guy says, he says, ab hum nahi, hamari khabrein aayengi. Wow. That so these people now have to make video clips about me. So to remain relevant. So this recent one was this clip. Now, this got then shared, and before I discuss the issues in it, it got shared here by, why leave out the other haters? Asim Qureshi, you hater. So Asim Qureshi is like, oh my God, those who support, I find this utterly despicable. Ayo. So I thought, why leave Baba Asim out of it, right? So let me see if I can find. So before I bring this up, I just want to say what's interesting is I seem to have this unique ability that I can bring together people from so many hateful different narratives who would otherwise never unite. So you would get them that, they wouldn't unite on anything. Remember recently I spoke about that Thai auntie, this newly found obsessed hater who's actually hates Islam as well. Yet you got somebody like that who is absolutely wouldn't pairing up with Asim Qureshi Saab. Why? That's just one of the people. You had, I'm just going to bring this up. You had other bunch of all from diverse walks of life coming together. Asim Qureshi, who is an jihadi supporter, who would then be very anti people who support the Saudi regime, yet coming together. Then there was, un momento, let me just Just bring this up. Abe yaar. Has it gone? Oh, here it is. Oh, you guys probably can't see this. There was a Ruqayya Haris. Also getting involved. Obviously, another hater. I a failed journalist. So you got all of these people coming together who, I'm sure if you put them in a room, they'd probably just kill each other. Yet, right, what is this? Right, yet, let me just get out of this. What is going on there? Okay, let me just press exit here, hopefully. Okay, so yet you've got all of these people coming together just to hate on me. I thought, wow, only very few who can unite the ummah in that way. Very few people. Let me, un momento, if I bring this up here. No, not that one.
We embrace the
this
masses.
Is
we
the
embrace every single thing that is set upon us, and we deal with it because we have no fear. So when we see the example of
this is a speech being given. This is who these people are.
Chechnya, Iraq, Palestine, Kashmir, Afghanistan.
Acha. Mullah Umar. Acha.
When we see Hezbollah
Acha.
defeating the armies of Israel, we
Acha.
know what the solution is and where the victory lies.
Acha, where does it lie?
That it is incumbent upon all of us to support the jihad
Huh?
of our brothers and sisters in these countries when they are facing the oppression of the West.
Shabash. Acha. Support the jihad of the... Acha. Is it any surprise that this guy is not going to like me? I thought, acha. This is the thing. So these people had made this, shared this, saying, look, oh my God, Mufti, look at, he's saying we should defend freedom of speech. Somebody, Yasser, saying that Ruqayya Haris lost her mind a long time ago. Yeah, and that's absolutely true. I mean, she's just another example of somebody, what I said earlier on, struggling to find relevance. Because if you are not a person of ideas, you are just a person that is of other people. Like your world is just other people. Your world is not a world of ideas, of concept. You have nothing integral to give to the world except report on other people who have ideas. So to these people, the only way they can remain relevant is speak of... Khatim Rizvi said Mullah Umar led a group that brought America loss. Okay, he's no Mullah Umar. No, this guy's no Mullah Umar, but this guy is another example. You see, he is in many ways, Asim Qureshi, this is a kind of syndrome. He is reflective of a whole category of people. And let me tell you this. This category of people, their life has kind of been, unfortunately, a lie. Because they spent maybe a few decades, and in a way I can feel sorry for them, but, it is what it is. Like they spent maybe 2 decades of their life invested in this jihadi sympathy. And what's happened is the world just moved on. The world just moved on. Muslims today, the majority of the Muslims are young Muslims in this country. The majority of the Muslims are Muslims under 35, perhaps now even under 30. Those people are not these extremist sympathizers. They don't sympathize with Taliban or with Al-Qaeda or how these people used to rate Anwar al-Awlaqi and all these kind of extremist terrorists. They're not that category of Muslims. These people don't have a voice anymore. They don't have relevance anymore. You spent your whole life not enjoying what Allah had actually given you, trying to set up a khilafah, which Allah never even asked for, but never happened. And you struggled and struggled, and now you've reached a stage in life in the Middle Ages where maybe your own children are even doubting Islam and you don't have the answers for them. This is not him specifically. This is a generation of people like that. So what you have is you've got the younger people around them who now will ask questions because look, science has moved on, atheism has moved on, generally the world has moved on. They've got newer challenges. They've got newer questions. This generation of people, this kind of Asim Qureshi syndrome people, they don't know what do you have to show for anything? The Islam you represent is outdated. Nobody resonates with it. Nobody's going to set up a khilafah for you. Nobody even is going to sympathize this jihadi sympathy anymore. You sacrifice so much of the dunya and now you can't have that dunya, or you can try, but you're a bit old or you're not really. And then your own, maybe young people around you don't even believe in Islam. You yourself may now have doubts on Islam, but you haven't actually studied Islam to know the answers. Na khudai mili na visale sanam, na idhar ke rahe na udhar ke rahe. As the poet says that I didn't get, he says, I didn't get the Lord, I didn't get God, and I never got women either. He says, na idhar ke rahe na udhar ke rahe. It's like I lost out on everything. Like neither the deen, neither the dunya. And I suppose that's what really burns them, because when they look at somebody like me, they see that the deen for me is not an impediment for my dunya. And that bothers them, because for them it was a constant impediment. So they see someone khudai bhi mili aur visale sanam. They got khudai and visale sanam. They're like, yaar, this one you're teasing me, this one. So this is why it really bothers some of these people. I get that, and it is a bichara kind of thing. I mean, I'm not saying him, but people of that generation, because a lot of them, I'll be honest with you, when they reflect deeply, or they try to now, they even see holes in Islam. Like, to them, Islam doesn't actually stand up to. So then they have to make an extra rigid stance to make sure that Islam doesn't collapse for them. But obviously they could take the answers from people like me, but kaha Raja Boj, kaha Gangu Teli. This is they're obviously not going to come to me, because to come to me, it would be Ay nafs al-lawama. This is the thing, you see, to me, I have the answers to the problems that the atheists present and all these things, but those answers may not fit in with the narrative that they've been so rigidly defending. And the irony is this, these haters like this Ruqayya Haris, you see, on her profile, it said she represents Islamic studies. I thought, you taking the mick, right? Look, this, look, and I don't mean her appearance. I don't mean that. I mean, are you taking the mick seriously? They wouldn't know a single thing about Islam. They wouldn't even probably be able to read Juz Amma. They wouldn't, how could they write, they represent Islamic studies? It's like, what the hell do you represent by Islamic studies? The Alif Ba Ta. And these people, the funny thing is that the only people like that lady, Ruqayya, the only people that would give them a justification for their Islam is me. And this is the irony that they would now, and they hate that because they hate me. So it's like, well, nobody else, their version, like the Islam they want to live is basically what I teach. It's not what this Asim Qureshi, who they're commenting with, or these other people, they would preach an Islam that would have them decapitated. That would consider them apostates. But this is the struggle. Like they would say, oh, I don't need to wear the hijab. To these people, you're a sinful so-and-so, worse than the blah, 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 blah. And the fact that you say you don't even need to, it's not even a commandment, means you're a kafir, according to those people. Because they say, one is, it's a sin not to do it, but to say it's not an obligation is kufr. Obviously, there are answers, but the answers I give. Who else are they going to go to? This is the thing. Like, so this is what like in the English-speaking world, you're not going to, even if they find other people, but those people would be very similar to me then. Like you're going to, if they go to Javed Ghamidi Saab, but then Javed Ghamidi Saab's views are going to be very similar to my views. They're not going to be very different. So, this one, tomato. Anyway, right, so moving back to our beloved and the questions that he has raised, that, you know, Shattar ki body. Look, yeah. So I want to give an explanation. Look, listen, people, first of all, I want to just answer some of these questions, because some people have asked. I do believe in the freedom of speech. I do believe that people do have a right to express themselves. Now, in that particular context, we were speaking about humor. And I did say that I believe humor should be protected sacredly. Now, obviously, I didn't mean, you see, the dumb things that people started saying, oh, sacred. What does that mean? Oh, does it say in the Quran? Oh, where does it say in the Quran? Where does it say in the Quran? You had this lady on there, on this same post, right? Clearly the result of whose parents, you know, this is why obviously you shouldn't marry your cousins. Your first cousins. The lady said, oh, you know, he's just always on Alum Rock Road. He's just always in cafes and restaurants. I thought, unless your dad is paying for my bill, why does it bother you? And secondly, she said, oh, do you remember, I wanted to take a screenshot and put it here, but I forgot. She said, oh, do you remember, he said 3 years ago, somebody insulted his daughter, and he said he got offended, so we should insult his daughter and remind him. Ah, you're inbred. You know, I don't know how these people survive in the world. Like, how do they survive? How do they not get, like, how do they live? Like, I don't. I think if we can figure out how they live, it's really surprising why the Neanderthals went extinct. I mean, I don't. Damn, does that mean that if Neanderthals were alive today, the Wahhabi following would have been huge? Anyway, look, listen. Right, okay. Now, nobody said that insulting people, as in abusing people, verbal abuse, is fine. I've always said, in fact, I've got a video, it was shared recently about is swearing haram. And I've said that, look, to insult someone is forbidden if you're abusing them. That is forbidden. Now, nobody's saying that. I'm not saying you racially abuse people or sexually, as in verbally abuse people. And obviously, look, them saying that, oh, 3 years, was it 3 years ago, there was, on one of my Monday nights, I spoke about some people speaking about wanting to, they were saying, about speaking, I don't even want to really say it, but they were just saying all this kind of atrocious stuff about my daughter, who was 3 at the time. Now, and, saying like horrendous things, that crimes that they wanted, that they should carry out against her. And I found that despicable, and I reported it to the police. Now, look, them saying, oh, why didn't he find that funny? I find this question hilarious. Like, wait a minute. Why didn't I find some people making comments, not comments, about stating what they should conduct acts of sexual violence against, let's say, my 3-year-old child? Why didn't I find that funny? So why, if I didn't find that funny, why can I find other jokes funny? Oh my God, I sure hope this lady is claiming disability benefits. I mean, is that really a question? Is that genuinely a question? Like, so, look, let me get this right. And there were several people on this same, and check this out, this jihadi sympathizer, Asim Qureshi, on his, when somebody sent me the link, on his page, several people saying, oh, we should insult Mufti's mum and we should insult his daughters and see how he likes it. Is this what Islam has been reduced to? Did he tell them off? No. Did he delete their comments? No. Why would he? He's like, well, absolutely fine. And I'm not saying he needs to. But look, did he? This is the Islam that they're supporting. This is what they're supporting. Now, look, let's be clear. People can go and watch my clip. It's recorded. It's on YouTube. I've said very clearly that, look, there is a distinction between a comedian who's on a stage making jokes, and there's a difference between hate speech. We as human beings, okay, not the inbred ones, but the normal human beings, we can tell. We can pick up when somebody is on a stage making jokes and when somebody is rallying a hate speech. We can see the difference. We can tell. So, do I defend the rights of comedians to be able to speak unrestrictedly? I do defend their right to do that. I may hate their jokes. I may dislike their jokes. I may like their jokes. I may love their jokes. It doesn't matter. The point is that even if I hate the joke, even if they made a joke about Pakistanis being all inbreds, if they made a joke about all people are like this, it may be a dumb joke, it may be stupid, but they have the right to make a joke. Comedians do have that right, because comedy, to me, cannot be censored. If you start to censor it, where do you draw the line? You can't say, well, because it offends me, you can't say this, because every joke, the purpose of jokes is that the punchline is something you don't expect. It has to be politically incorrect. Otherwise, most jokes wouldn't be funny if they were not politically incorrect. So this is it's the unexpected nature of them that makes them funny to us. So do they have the right to say it? I feel they do have the right to say it. Now people say, oh my God, but he made a joke about people that were killed in the Christchurch thing. He did. I mean, what do you want done? Like, do you feel, is it illegal? It's not illegal. Do I feel these things are haram by Islam to make jokes for a comedian? I don't feel they're haram by Islam, but yes, people said, look, there's civility. He could have been sensitive. True, I agree. He could have been sensitive. But the point was, this joke has already happened. He's not going to ask my permission to do it. So the point is, should these jokes be allowed? Yes, I feel that people have the freedom. And they asked me, what would I say? Oh, he wouldn't defend jokes about the Holocaust. Of course I would. I feel you have the right to make a joke about the Holocaust. Now, legislation may prevent you from doing that in certain countries, and I feel that legislation is wrong. It needs to be revisited. Jokes should not be censored. That people should have freedom. They said, would I defend the joke about 9/11? I would. If somebody was to crack a joke about 9/11, many people do crack jokes about. Now it's a bit outdated. I feel that they have the freedom to do so. It doesn't mean you have to find it funny, but you have to have the right, you see, under freedom of speech to allow people for comedy. This is because this is linked with, you see, satire is linked with critical thought. It's not like insulting. Yes, it could offend. There is a difference between offense and conscientiously just insulting someone verbally. Like me just swearing at you is not the same as me satirizing something for a different reason. Now, this is not to do with that particular joke per se. It's to do with the topic. So I wanted to share that. But the joke thing, the other point they had an aspect, the other point they picked up, why did I smirk at the joke? Look, the nature of jokes is there's a punchline to them. And the punchlines are counterintuitive. So when you hear something that's counterintuitive, even if you don't like it, sometimes it may have a knee-jerk reaction. I've heard jokes which sometimes are totally disturbing and you felt afterwards like, I shouldn't have laughed, but you will laugh. Because the nature of laughter is it's unfathomable. It's not a rational calculation. You don't laugh at something, but because let me get this right. When somebody walks, like and they fall over and hit their head and you laugh, that's like, wait a minute, you're just laughing at somebody's misery. If I made a joke about deaf people or blind people or stupid people, you laugh, but you're laughing at somebody's misery. There's blind people out there, ain't there? If somebody made a joke about disabled people, and you're like, well, if somebody made a joke about racism or about a race, a particular thing. So basically, you're just saying jokes can never be allowed because most jokes are always around something like this. So you're saying, well, no jokes can ever be allowed because they're all politically incorrect. And even when people fall over, if you laugh at them, you should go to hell. Oh, God. You know, the biggest joke in this is God giving you that particular brain, because that mindset is a joke in itself from God to the rest of us. It's like saying, hey, check this out. This is exactly what it is. So look, people were saying, look, why would you laugh at a joke if it was your loved ones? Well, obviously you wouldn't. I'm not saying you should laugh at that Christchurch joke. Let me be very clear. I'm not saying, this is the problem with Muslims. They get so emotional that they refuse to hear the voice of reason. Nobody has said you should laugh at that joke. You can happily say, I find that joke disgusting. Happily say that. In fact, I want you to say it. Say it. I will say to you, that is a disgusting joke. That is insensitive. I will say that. I'm saying it. It's insensitive. But does he have the freedom to say it? I'm saying, yeah, he does have the freedom to make these jokes. Yes, I don't like it, but that is the freedoms that comedians have. They stand on a stage and they make jokes. People say, yeah, but people died in it. That's true. But you see, he's making a joke. Obviously, he's making a joke about it. Now, I'm not saying, look, this isn't about him. This is about the concept. People say, well, would you laugh at it if it was your mother that died in it? Well, that's a dumb question. Because if you had to ask that question, you're clearly, obviously, the love child of siblings. Because that doesn't make any sense. Look, if you are traumatized by an event, you're naturally not going to be laughing by that event. That's obvious. The fact that you are suffering from trauma, it's like saying, well, look, would you laugh at a joke about a blind man? You might. And they say, but what if that was your dad? You're Einstein. I swear. You know, the genius level of these inbred Muslims is like, it's just at another level. It's like, well, what the hell are you talking about? How does that even make any sense? Obviously, if you're traumatized by a particular event, you're not going to laugh at it. Now, if you're not traumatized by it personally, there's a chance that you may, as a reactionary thing, laugh to something that's being said. And I want to say something here. Why is it then okay, like that Ruqayya Haris said, that, oh, kuffar, and she wrote something about kuffar and stuff like this. I thought, what the? Look, why is it okay to then laugh at any tragedy of non-Muslims? Why can you crack jokes about that? You know, why is it only Muslims that you can't? Are Muslims God's favorite people? Did God say that, oh, you can't make a joke about Muslims? Right, you can't make a joke about, sorry, I was just reading the comments. You can't make a joke about Muslims, but you can make it about non-Muslims. Why can you make jokes about dead non-Muslims? So then you're going to say, unless you say, you can never laugh at a joke about any death ever. Ever. Right, so any joke involving death ever, you can never laugh at that. And if you did laugh, let's say I told you a joke and it was funny, and it was about some random, like I said, some three Japanese people, they went down, one did this and he fell off a plane and he died, and you weren't expecting it, and you laughed. Why did you laugh? Why? You wouldn't laugh if that was your son that fell off the plane. You see, and then you say, well, oh, but it wasn't a Muslim, so it's okay. But if it was a Muslim Japanese that fell off the plane, then, why did you laugh? So, look, what is this haram policing going around? Look, Islam is to do with you. Police yourself. Okay? Nobody's telling you to laugh at anything. Clearly, you don't have enough laughter in your life anyway. These people are clearly miserable. I guarantee you, all of these people that are making a fuss, I could guarantee you they are stuck in miserable lives. Miserable lives. And this is the problem, that they just want the world to be sad. And they struggle that any kind of excuse that they will have to stamp some authority. And what better authority than to claim religion? Which is absurd, really, because when you look at some of them, they're actually Islamophobes themselves. That Thai, what's her name? Thai, Firaun Yolad. There was one Thai who was the female pharaoh. There's her, this Ruqayya Haris. What do these women have to do with the Islamic discourse? Nothing, but they'll bring Islam into it. Why? Because this guy, this jihadi sympathizer, Baba Farid Gangu Teli, all these other people, so the way we can reconcile this is people should go and abuse his mom. Ayo Ghazali of our age. So the ability to crack jokes is equated to, let's go swear at somebody's mum. Okay. If that brings peace to your heart, go on then, just if swearing at my mum, if sitting there swearing at my mum brings you peace and brings you closer to nirvana, kar lo yaar. If this is what obviously in your religion you've been taught, kar lo yaar, kar lo. Who am I to stop you from getting to paradise? Jao, iqra wartaqi. That hadith, keep reciting and keep elevating your maqam. I mean, this is the dumbness that these people have, arrived at. this kind of, wow, it's pitiful, man. So this is what these people, and what I find intriguing, you see, check this out. I find this so intriguing that these people want to speak about honor of dead people. Yeah. And look, I accept, somebody said these people are shuhada. Yeah. Fine, I accept every dead soul is to be honored. But I recognize jokes are a different thing. They're said for a joke, and I do defend that. And on that note, just as, for a moment, just to state that, look, the whole message of the Qur'an was in its nature a statement that it knew would be offensive to polytheists. And somebody said the Qur'an was an academic discourse. No, it wasn't. Qur'an wasn't an academic discourse. It wasn't there to say, hey, I got this theory, you got this theory, let's have an academic. It was making a bold statement. It wasn't interested in an academic discourse. It was there to make a statement. Does Allah not call the kuffar deaf, dumb and blind? Mute, summun, bukmun, umyun? Does he not say, ulaika kal an'am, they're like animals? Does Allah not say this in the Qur'an, zinnim, a bastard child? He's a man, but the fact that utuwin ba'da dhalika zanim. I'm sorry, the Quran is politically incorrect, unacceptable now. This is the problem. These people haven't even read the Quran with meaning in their lives. What do these people know? They obviously they judge me, this guy sitting there with an earring, with a chain. But hey, I've memorized the entire Quran. I've read it with meaning. I've read it with several tafasir. You haven't even probably read the Quran once in your life with meaning. So, you see, if you read the Quran, you'll see that it does. It offends with its message. But you have to give the freedom to offend. Otherwise, how can ideas be challenged? Let people challenge your ideas. Now, there's a difference between that and just outright going on and just going on a rage, swearing at people. Just, you effing blimey, blah, 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 I did this to your mom and I did this to, hey, what's your name? Ezekiel, F you Ezekiel. Hey, you know what I did last night? Don't you dare bring my mother into it. It's like that's everybody understands what that is. That's different. Now, I want to come to this point. These people speaking about what voicing your love, not speaking up for the deen, they said. That why he's trying to appease the kuffar. All of these people, that Gangu Teli, Farid Gangu Teli, this, what's his name, Asim Qureshi, and all these other people. Tell me, where's your love for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? When these Najdi, Wahhabi, disrespectful people say that the Prophet married and bedded a child, where's your love for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? How dare you concretize and validate these beliefs when they say that the Prophet forcefully took Safiya, in other words, raped her after having killed her husband? How dare you not condemn that teaching? And this is to everyone that supports these things. The mother of the believers, Maria al-Qibtiyya, radiyallahu anha, these filthy people, they refuse till today, out of their arrogance, to recognize her as a wife of the Prophet. They call her a concubine of the Prophet. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Allah says, they are your mothers. These people say she was a sex slave to the Prophet, out of spite for Maria radiyallahu anha. She was the only wife of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that brought him a child that lived in this world after prophethood. That was Ibrahim alayhi salam, who the Prophet said that he sees such radiance in him that he almost sees prophethood in him if he lived. That when he passed away, it broke the heart of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Why don't you defend that? You refuse to call her a wife of the Prophet. Till this day, they will refuse to call her a wife. They do not include her from the Zawja. Where is their love for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Bukhari says that the Prophet went and tried to forcefully touch a woman, told her to give herself to him. Nonsense, rubbish, yet they support it. Where is their love for the Prophet? Bukhari says the Prophet forgot the Qur'an. He forgot a surah. The Prophet became so clumsy, he forgot the Qur'an. He heard a person saying it. He heard a person reciting a surah and said, "Hi yaar, oh yeah, that's the Qur'an. Oh, kuntu nasit, I forgot about it. Oh, yeah, write that, put that in the Qur'an as well." This is the Prophet of God. So clumsy. Do they? No, that we hear, we obey. Our Dada told us we have to. Who's the Prophet? Don't worry, yaar. Throw him under the bus. They say the Prophet Moses ran around naked in Bukhari so people could see his testicles, to see if his testicles were swollen. This is Bukhari. Where is their love for defending the honor of this deen? Do they speak out for it? Does their dad speak out for it? No, they don't. Why? Just to appease their Wahhabi leaders sitting in Saudi Arabia funding them. Where is this, this love for the Prophet that they say, where is it, yaar? What is this love? Is it only for calling people murtad, kuffar, and we should kill the apostates? Is that the only time your love comes up? Is it only for saying we should kill Shia, we should kill Qadianis, we should kill people? Is this the only time you remember the love for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? That too on a fabricated hadith on the back of Ikramah, who was a Khariji, who was from the Khawarij sect, who Imam Malik said you shouldn't be taken from this person. But just because Bukhari put it in his book. Where is the love for the Prophet? What is this honor for the deen that they speak of? Nothing but fake, of absolute false facade. कुछ नहीं सिवाय मुसलसल फरेब है, देखा है जिंदगी को निहायत करीब से. Nothing but fake. These people, yes, they hate on me. So yes, if they find anything, if they find me sneezing, it'll be enough to say, well, that's blasphemy. But tell me, did you once stand up for the honor, for the love of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Not once did you. Not once. Forgetful. This Gangu Teli, he has a thing on YouTube where him and his his group are discussing the Prophet. They say, yes, so what if the Prophet was clumsy? One of them said, yeah, so the Prophet had magic done on him by some Jewish witch, and the Prophet became impotent, sexually impotent. So they say, yeah, but so what if the Prophet was sexually impotent? If only their dad was sexually impotent and hadn't given birth to this useless, this is the love they show for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So what if he was sexually impotent? So what if he's clumsy, forgetting the Quran? Oh, he's trying to forcefully touch a woman. He's bedding a little child, little girl. He's raping a woman, killing her husband, snatching her, having sex with her. What kind of an Islam are you? Rahmatan lil alamin. Ma arsalnaka illa rahmatan lil alamin. Not for the Muslims, not rahmatan lil muslimin, rahmatan lil alamin. Where is that rahmah in your picture, in your portrayal of Islam? Where is it? I don't see it. Allah says that He is Ra'ufur Rahim. He is this person who has come as a paragon of mercy to you people. Yet, then they find one. Words fail me. I don't. This kind of thing charges me, but I see that none of them will challenge their seniors and refuse to follow their sect and say these things. None of them. Rather, they will keep the peace with their, Buzurgan-e-Deen, with their Mashayikh-un-Najd, with their, Wahhabis, and they will keep it with them, and what they will do instead is say, it doesn't matter, maybe the Prophet did it, it's okay. It was a different time. That's not respect for the Prophets. That's not honor for Islam. Your honor does not lie in trying to set up some phony kind of some weird fantasy caliphate around the world, which Allah did not ask you to set up. Neither did the Prophet The Prophet was not here trying to chase politics. See, that's all the Prophet is for them. For them, the Prophet is somebody that has given them the license to have power. You know, we want to take over. We want sex slaves. We want to enslave their women. We want to show them. We want control. We want dominion. Nothing but insecure people. And hence their faith crumbles before them as they age. Because they built it upon a cobweb. This is what they built their iman upon. وَإِنَّ أَوْهَنَ الْبِيُوتِ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ لَبَيْتَ الْعَنْكَبُوتِ. This is it. It's the worst of things to build a foundation upon. But yeah, let's wrap this up, people. It's been it's getting very late. We've gone on for quite a while. Guys, as always, it's been awesome. This was a bit extended. I'm losing my voice now. But yeah, if you want to reach out to me, you know the places: Instagram, Facebook Messenger, Patreon. Other than that, do look out for, I'm going to try and have a MindTrap tomorrow night. There is Dr. Elia from Sweden, who is a professor of linguistics. Do look out for that. Other than that, take very good care of yourselves. Remember me in your kind du'as. As always, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'm going to put up my page. Do like, subscribe, spread the love, people. Spread the not not that fasad. This fitan and fasad. Salamullahi alaykum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.